Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Dark Art Society podcast. My name is Chet. I'm the host. And today we have an interview with Mike Bracken, the horror geek. I don't know if you watch that channel on YouTube, but you really should. It's my favorite show on YouTube, I think, the horror geek. And it's a hilarious horror movie review show with a lot of really bad movies, which I love. And Mike's hilarious. So you should watch it. The Horror Geek on YouTube. Anyway, interview coming up with him. So I'm looking forward to that. And what else is going on? Still working for my painting my zombie deathbot show. I've got some other stuff going on. I got collectors coming by this week to pick up some frame commissions and some tool posters. So it's a busy week, extremely busy week. So I'm kind of trying to bounce around on both of those. It's been rough. It's been rough. I'm not going to lie, but I'm getting through it. And that's pretty much it. My life is just consumed with this work. I'm really not thinking about much past my opening on October 8th. Just need to, just get the work done. Just get the work done. And I'll make it. It's going to be rough, but I'll make it. Anyway, yeah, if you want to support the Dark Art Society podcast, you can do it on our Patreon at patreon.com/Dark Art Society. And if you join at the $5 level, $5 a month, you can get entered every month to win a free skull from our sponsors, the Skull Shop. And that's SKULLSHOPPE online. They have amazing skulls. I own two. There's one. Looks just like a real skull. It's amazing. Love it. Anyway, you can join at the $1 level. There's different levels. But if you want to get entered into the skull to win the skull, just join at the $5 level. And every month we're going to do a drawing to see who wins. Anyway, new subscribers this month are George Jung, aka JJ. That's it. Thanks, George. Appreciate it. I also have a Patreon, patreon.com/Chet Zar. And I post everything I'm working on all the time. If you haven't been seeing me post art on social media very much in the last 4 years or however long I've been on there, that's because it's all on Patreon. So check that out. Oh, I also got that's the other thing that's going on. I'm trying to get on some podcasts to promote Dystopia because the Dystopia book is out. I'm going to have a book signing at my show in October. So it's going to be cool at Copro Gallery, October 8th. And I'm just trying to get on any podcasts I can to promote it. Promote it any way I can, really. So any ideas, hit me up. I've got a garage full of books with no distributor. And because it's all self-produced. So I'm shipping them, selling them myself. So if you have any thoughts on how I can reach more people, let me know. Drop me a line. You can do that through the Patreon, actually. I'm easy to find anyway. I'm online. I think that's everything. I think that's it. Yeah, I guess that's it. All right, here we go. Hope you enjoy this interview with Mike Bracken, aka the Horror Geek. Here we go. What's up, Mike?
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for coming on. Finally,
I know.
Roped you in.
This has been a long time coming.
Yes. Well, I'm excited to have you on. I've been wanting to have you on for a long time, as you know. I've been commenting on your Twitter feed and YouTube feed, I believe, that
Yes.
telling you to come on the show because it's like my favorite show on YouTube. I watch it
Thank
on the
you.
premiere
Oh,
every time it premieres. When I'm up early enough, I watch it. It's hilarious. I love it. So it's amazing.
it's so funny that like, the show premieres at 9:45 on a Wednesday, which just was an arbitrary day and time I picked when I started like 3.5 years ago.
Uh-huh.
And now I'm afraid to change it because like a
Yeah,
creature of routine. And it's
that's
like,
how.
oh, it's like nobody can watch at 9:45
Yeah,
in the morning on Wednesday. They're all at work. What are you thinking? I
yeah,
work at home, so I do whatever.
Same here, same here. But I'm on the West Coast, so that's like
Also,
what?
geez, yeah, that's
Yeah,
super
that's
early.
why it's like I kind of miss it sometimes, but I always catch it right after.
Well,
Yeah,
I
it's just
appreciate it.
yeah, it's so funny.
Thank you.
The writing's great. It's like I get at least one good, like laugh out loud, really loud moment on
Good.
every video, and it's
That's the goal.
the rest are just chuckles.
Yeah.
It's
No,
just
that's the if I could get you to laugh once or like drink out your nose once, that's a
yes,
win.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
There's so many jokes they can't all be hits.
No, they're great. They're all great. It's just like you can't have like belly laughs through the whole thing. It's like
Right.
it's hilarious. It's just full of hilarity. I just
We
love it.
try
I just
I
think
try to pace them, but I
yes,
try so somebody complained once that there were too many jokes
no,
and it was like, "No, I want you to like have to go back and rewatch them." So
right.
that like helps me algorithmically on YouTube.
Well,
So if you
not
have to go back
yeah,
and
yeah.
watch it again, that's an extra view for me.
That's
So I
smart.
win.
You are in marketing, right? So
I
you
do. Yes, I do work in digital marketing. So yeah, so I know all the little tricks.
oh, that's great. Yeah, yeah, I don't know when I mean the algorithm got me to you on YouTube,
Mhm.
so it did work. It did work well for you in that way. I know you're having trouble with
Even a broken clock is right twice a day. That's how I think about the algorithm at YouTube.
Yeah, I
Like
know. It's
it
like
helps people find me, and then it loses me a lot of people along the way too. So
yeah, it's a real bummer. I mean, part of the reason I wanted you to come on, aside from the fact that I'm just like a huge fan of the show, and I think people that listen to my podcast will be interested in your show because there's like a
Mhm.
ton of horror movie fans on here.
Good.
But also that because you have a Patreon, and I know that, and people support the Dark Art Society on the Patreon, and so it's like they already have accounts, so everyone should go and support Mike's Patreon because then he can deal with all this hassle of losing ad revenue because of Google's bullshit. It'll help, you
Yes.
know.
Yes, I appreciate any and all support. It's especially important this week. So I've been doing this for what, 3.5 years now. And when I started, I did not go into it naively because I'd been a film critic for like 20 years. And so I talked to like big horror YouTubers in the space type thing and asked them like, well, how much of a pain is this going to be with copyright? And how often do you get this? Do they give you a lot of strikes? And I talked to James at Dead Meat, and I talked to Horror Guru and Brad the Cinema Snob and a bunch of people who had sizable channels, and they're all like, well, you'll get claimed, but you don't get strikes, and you can appeal and all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, that seems doable. And so that's what I went in, and for the first year really kind of flew under the radar. I mean, I got away with covering stuff like Tokyo Gore Police,
Hmm.
which is super gory, and I left a lot of gore in, and I flew under the radar. And then at some point in like 2021, YouTube and the copyright holders found me. And then the vendetta started. The Sick Flicks vendetta was fully underway. So you would get claims, and I would go and fight the claims and appeal and stuff like that, and I would win about 99% of the time. Like, I go, this is fair use, I'm a film critic, I've been on Rotten Tomatoes, I've been all these places, and they would drop them. And a lot of times, so the funniest one is Lionsgate, where they will send me emails asking me like, hey, will you promote this? And I'm like, no, I'm on your press list, and you claim every video and then you won't release them, and I have to like threaten to go to court over them. So,
Oh my
but
god.
in the past year, uh YouTube really went insane, like you can't show anything anymore. Like
Uh,
I live in constant fear. They will come along and take away your money, and they won't tell you why. They won't tell you what they're flagging it over. I made a joke about a butt plug, an object that looked like sort of like a butt plug. It was not a butt plug. It was not used in a sexual context. I just said this thing is the mystical butt plug, and the video got demonetized. And I'm
Oh my
like trying to figure
God.
out what they're, because they won't tell you what it is.
Right.
So I'm trying to figure out what it is, and it was butt plug. I took the butt plug out joke. I changed the word, and then suddenly it was fine. So and it's just gotten crazier since then. Like Slumber Party Massacre, the thumbnail was literally the poster, you know, the infamous poster,
Mhm.
and they flagged that. They're like, this is sexual content and titillating. And yet if you go to YouTube and you search for Slumber Party Massacre, the top result is Rent Slumber Party Massacre with the poster.
So this is AI stuff, right?
Yeah, but you know, like when you appeal, it goes to a human, and they
Oh.
upheld it.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, so sometimes you will appeal and it goes to a human and they go, yeah, this is the AI is clearly wrong. And other times they'll go, it's just luck of the draw, and you never know who you get, and you never get to talk to them, and you never get an
Yeah.
explanation for why the decision is. But you know, in the past, I had never had a video blocked on YouTube other than an appearance when I was on Beat the Geeks. NBC Universal Viacom blocked my Beat the Geeks
Ah,
appearance. But I'd never had a video from the show blocked, and so like a month and a half ago, I'm like, hey, it's time to do Lady Terminator, because I love that crazy Malaysian movie or
that
Indonesian
was a
movie.
good one.
And yeah, I'm like, my audience is gonna love this. It's time to do it. Let's do it. We write this funny script, we film it, I get my editor to edit it, we upload it, and it's blocked worldwide. Like
Wow.
nobody can see this video but me. So we
That
appeal. Yeah, so you appeal because there's like 1,000 videos on Lady Terminator on YouTube. Why are you blocking mine, right?
right.
So so we appeal and they reject it. It's some company in Indonesia. So basically, uh, the option now is I have to take a copyright strike and then appeal again, and they have to either take me to court or release it. And you know, that's an expensive game of chicken to play, even
Right.
though I play it. We're playing it now because we have the same issue with like I'd never had a video blocked, and I've had 2 blocked in the last month suddenly. So my review of Full Cheese Conquest got blocked by some company in Italy who blocked it, and then when I appealed, they released the block, but they're like, "But we want your ad money." And
Right.
and I'm like, "No, that's not acceptable either."
Yeah.
So
I'm
I
just doing it for
I
the love, man. I
yeah,
don't care about
yeah,
the money.
like you know, people say this all the time, and they make you feel bad about it because you're like, you know, well, why aren't you just making these videos for free? They're just
Yeah.
a hobby, and it's like, well, I've got thousands of dollars worth of equipment, and I
It's
pay an
yeah,
editor.
it's a lot of work.
It's a full-time job to
It's
make one every week,
yep.
and I would, you know, like I would like my paltry $200 of ad revenue, thank you. You know,
Right.
like 'cause I'm not over here getting rich.
Yeah,
So yeah,
exactly.
but and so we're literally at the point where I had to take a copyright strike, and if you get 3 of those, you're out, you're gone. They nuke your channel.
Oh my God.
Um and and so I had to file a counterclaim, and now they have, you know, like another 5 days to decide if they want to go to court over, you know, $200. So
Yeah, and the irony is that you know, most of the movies that you're reviewing are ones that like a lot of them I've never even heard of, and I'm a
right.
big horror
Yeah.
guy, and
So
so it's like it's making me want to go get the Blu-ray and check it
yeah.
out, and it's like it's putting in the public consciousness. It's so backwards and
I, I
stupid.
I tell them this every week. I'm like, every week you know, I post an affiliate link so you can go buy the movie if you want, and that helps the channel as
Yeah,
well. I get a few pennies from each DVD. So it's literally a few pennies. Like
right,
you're not living off DVD affiliate sales through Amazon, no
right.
matter how big your channel is. But so I get, you know, and I'm like, every week I can show you like 3 or 4 people go buy this Blu-ray because I talked about it on the
Right.
show. And like those people were not going to go buy that movie this week if I hadn't talked about your movie on the show. Like they're not popular movies,
Right.
you know. So yeah, it's just it's a backward system, and it's set up in such a way that you know, like when I explain how this whole appeal system on YouTube works for the show, like you would think that if somebody claimed copyright on my video, that I would then appeal to an impartial third party. Well,
Right.
that's not true. I appeal to the person who filed the copyright claim in the first place.
That's
So where's their
insane.
incentive to drop it? Like I'm like, does nobody see the insanity of this system?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah. So
It just, it got YouTube got huge, and it's
yeah.
still not, it got
Well,
big before it was ready, I guess, because they haven't figured
yeah.
it out. Everybody complains about this,
Yeah, yeah, and it's one of those things where, they covered their own ass and stuck it to the creators in the
right?
process. Like,
Yeah,
we're not going to be responsible for what you upload to the site, but we will not defend you or
right,
protect you. And it's hilarious to me because it's like, well, is Lionsgate making you money or am I making you money? Because you
right.
take 45 cents of every dollar I make in ad money every
Yeah,
month.
it's so
So
wrong. It's just
yeah,
so
so it's
wrong.
like, why would you not stick up for me? I mean, and you know what? And this is the thing. Like, I get it. If you upload someone's full movie or someone's book or someone's full song, like a full
Mhm,
album, that's copyright abuse. But what
right,
I do is a review. It's parody. It's commentary. It's all protected under fair use. It's just this country's copyright laws are so ridiculously outdated that nobody understands fair use, and
yeah.
so you just end up fighting this fight, and you could potentially go to court over it and spend a bunch of money.
Well,
But
I
I'm a
hope
stubborn man, so I'm
good.
I'm like I'm like if somebody's gonna stand up to these companies, I guess it's gonna be me. So
Yeah, I know that this guy Ethan Klein from the H3
uh-huh.
podcast is like kind of, from my understanding, has led the movement in a way, about
Yeah.
getting new laws passed to
Hmm.
for fair use and stuff. And he's
Hmm.
actually, I think he's won a couple cases
Yeah,
or
he
something,
did. Yeah, they did.
which is really great for all
Yeah.
YouTube creators.
Well, this is what I tell them all the time. I'm like, look, I have a day job. So I'm not a broke guy.
Right.
I will go to court. If that's the road you want to go,
Yeah,
I can afford a lawyer. So,
that's excellent. Well, that's
so
good to
you're
hear.
not going to bully me into like giving you my money.
Right.
I'll spend money to keep what I have. So,
Yeah, yeah.
uh, and and the other thing is like like him, there's just this thing where people 98% of these claims are never even contested on YouTube. So this has led to this proliferation of scammers who come in
Right.
and claim things that they don't own the rights to because it's free money. Nobody will fight them on it, and
Right.
YouTube will just give you the money. They go, well, you filed a copyright claim. Like the company I'm fighting with now has a literally, they're supposed to be some big multi-million dollar digital rights management company. They've got a Gmail address that doesn't even have their company name in it. So
Wow.
I highly suspect about whether these are even the actual people.
Damn.
So
That's crazy.
so yeah,
Well,
and this is the worst part is like I just want to talk about horror
I
movies
know,
and
right?
cool shit. I don't want to be the guy who has to talk about how YouTube screws everybody over all the
Right.
time. But that's
Yeah,
become
yeah.
like my whole shtick now. Is like I go around talking about how copyright law is broken and YouTube sticks it to their creators at every
Right.
turn. So
They're kind of forcing your hand in that way,
they
but
do like well because nobody talks about it and nobody understands it if you're not on YouTube creating stuff. And so it's like it's like, well, I just want you guys to understand that this is what your favorite creator goes through. A Brandon Tenold, James at Dead Meat, Cinema Snob, Decker Shadow, all those guys who bring you these funny horror movie reviews. This is what we go through, like, and over a couple $100.
yeah.
Like, and it's like you go, well, maybe you should just give the couple $100 away, and it's like, no,
No, yeah.
like
It's like
this is my work. Like it's still work.
yeah, yeah.
So I
It's
say all the time, I'm like, I do not believe that what I do will be viable on YouTube in 5 years. That like the AI claiming system is like it used to be back in the day. You could take movies and you could resize them, or you could flip the
right. Yeah.
and it would fool the machines. And now we've done tests, like just experiments for fun when I'm bored, like let's upload this and change it around and see if we can slide it through or not. And you can't.
Oh,
None of that
really?
stuff works anymore. No, like, and the myth that was always like, well, if you use less than 9 seconds it's okay, or if you use less than 5 seconds. I've had them claim 2 seconds. I've had them claim 2 seconds and then 10 seconds of me and then another 2 seconds, like from a different part of the movie. So
Wow.
yeah, it's just like, I think until, there's some kind of redefining of copyright law and what fair use is, that like these guys will just claim everybody until we all give up. Because it's like how much stress do I want? This is supposed to be fun.
Yeah, that the first thing I thought, I was like, well, why don't you? And I think I've mentioned this maybe in a comment.
Mhm.
Why don't you? Because I thought it was more about the violence, but it's really
Yeah,
not. It's about like it's like you don't even know what it's about.
right.
That's part of the problem.
The beauty of being a horror creator is they get you on both.
Right. Especially the kind of movies you're doing.
Right. So I get every week is like, well, are they going to flag me for some gore or some sex scene or some joke, off-color joke I make, or will it be a copyright claim from some company? So
Right.
I'm really envious of the guys who just upload things and forget, like, don't have to worry about any of that. So
Yeah.
yeah, they get me both ways.
Because I was thinking, you could do an unedited version on your Patreon for your Patreon subscribers.
Right.
Doesn't have to worry about any of that stuff. But if you don't even know why they're claiming you, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
Really.
and that's it. And that's what I try to explain to people. Like, people are always like, well, why don't you go to Rumble or Odyssey or BitChute or uh, a those sites just don't pay enough
Right. Yeah.
to sustain. Like, it's not like what I do is, super valuable or super, like, I'm not saying like it's like a TV show or anything like that, but it costs money to make every
Hmm.
week. It costs a couple $100 to make an episode at this point, because I pay an editor. I had another writer for a while. It's a lot of hours of me. I have to buy all these movies, which I buy
Right.
anyway. But it costs money. It's a
Yeah.
lot of equipment to film, the cameras, the lights, the computer to edit. When I do edit, all that stuff costs money. And and I'm not trying to get rich. I'm just trying to. A lot of weeks I'm just trying to break even.
Yeah.
And so I go, yeah. If I go over to like BitChute, yeah, they'll probably leave me alone because the copyright claimers haven't figured out how to claim stuff over there yet. They
Right.
will in 5
Right.
years
Once
if it's
people are
still around.
making enough money,
Right, and once there's
they'll
enough
figure it
traffic
out.
over there, they'll figure it out the same way they did with Twitch. But like, there's no return on my investment.
Yeah.
And I have to look at it as both something I do be out of love and a passion project, but it's also cost me money. So,
Yeah.
you
Right.
know, so
Yeah.
but
YouTube's the
I
only
have
game
enough
in town,
expensive
so.
hobbies, is what I always tell people. I don't need video production as another expensive hobby. I just need video production to just basically pay for itself, and if it makes a few bucks, great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, people want you to fans of the show want to see you do better. I mean, I want to
Yes.
see the channel grow, and I mean,
Mhm.
I would watch every day if you had a new video. It's like if the channel was able to
I wish I could
generate
do. I wish I could do
right.
2 or 3 a week.
Yeah, it would be awesome, man. It's and so we want you to succeed, but I guess hopefully it seems like the bigger you get though, the less trouble you have because they're making more money off of you, and which is
Yeah,
also really unfair, you
yes.
know.
There is some truth to that. Now, to be fair, I will say I have seen James at Dead Meat. Dead Meat is a 5 million subscriber channel, if
Oh
you're
wow.
not familiar with it.
No, I'm not.
And he he's 5 million subs, and it's a big show, and he makes a lot. He employs like 11 people full time on that
Whoa.
show. Yeah, he was a professional editor. He just showed his new set. He had to have dropped $500,000 on his
Wow,
new home
that's
his new
crazy.
home set. He's doing very well, and I'm happy for him. He's a
Yeah.
very nice guy, totally deserves it. Love the guy. But and he will go through it too. Like, his Train to Busan video got blocked as soon as he uploaded it. But the difference is he's 5 million, so YouTube will actually talk to him
Right,
when he has a
exactly.
problem.
Yeah.
They may not help, but they'll talk to him. And because he's 5 million, he had more resources to reach out and resolve that off of YouTube. Whereas, when you're down here at me, like 65,000, nobody at YouTube wants to talk to me unless I'm in trouble.
Right.
And then they don't want to talk to me. They just want to send me a form letter to tell me I'm
Right.
in trouble. But but so but
Well,
yeah, so I wish the show were bigger, and I would like, but there's definitely that double standard, because you'll look at, like, I can't say butt plug, but Logan Paul could go into the Japanese forest and show a dead body, and it was
Right.
fine until people were outraged.
Yeah,
Like
right.
they only cared when people got mad about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's absolutely a double standard there, depending on the size of your viewership. So, and I wish that weren't so, but that's the
Well,
game we have to play.
yeah. How's the growth been on the channel?
So the channel has grown a lot. Like we're at like 65,000 right now.
Yeah.
I really would like to get to 100K. Would feel like a big deal.
Yeah.
And I have done that in 3.5 years from zero. Uh, and we basically have made like I've made like 180 videos in that time. So like when you see the metrics of YouTube success, like to get to 100,000 subscribers, it takes the average guy like 500 or 1,000 videos or something like that. So
Mm.
and a longer time. So I'm definitely ahead of the curve in terms of speed, and the pandemic helped that a lot. Like
Yeah.
everybody being locked in their house in 2020 was like, hey, let's watch this guy on YouTube be an idiot. So that was this Sick Flicks guy's a moron, but he's funny and it's something to do. He fills 20 minutes of my day, so we'll watch that. So yeah, so we did well with that, and right now we're just kind of the show is like in a really good place as far as like I know how the show works at this point. Like,
Yeah.
it still takes a lot of time to create, but like I know like how the jokes go and how the process of making the show is pretty locked in.
Mhm.
Um, the hardest thing has been since I've gotten bigger is just figuring out what people want.
Oh, yeah,
So,
right.
sometimes like early on it was like, oh, if I do tumbling doll of flesh, the 1,000 people who watch my channel are going to go nuts over that. Now
Uh,
it's like it's all over the place. Like I have
yeah.
no clue how anything's going to do anymore. So like the more popular a movie is, the worse it does for me. Like
Yeah, yeah,
if
it's, I I would say, not that I know, but just do what you think would be cool, and
that's it. Yeah.
that's
Like
sort of how I approach my artwork. It's like, I never know what's gonna sell or be
yep.
popular. My favorite one is the last one to sell, and
Yep.
it's like, just do what you think is the best and let it all sort itself out, you know?
That's it. And that's where I've come to sort of this year is like, because I work in marketing and like my attitude was, well, I should be able to figure this out. Like
Right.
this is what I do for a living for other people is figure out this stuff. And I'm like, oh, I should be able to like solve this puzzle, and you just can't. Like sometimes, like so as an example, the more people beg me to do something, the worse it does. So people hounded me to do like Evil Dead, and so I'm like, it's too popular, too many people know it. It's like
Mhm.
everybody's got an Evil Dead review, but finally I was like, I'll just do it. Let's just do it, and it tanked. Like it was terrible. Like it did
Wow.
terrible numbers by the channel's standards, and so and then I will do something like Claudio Fragaso's Robo War, which nobody knows,
Right.
and suddenly that had 100,000 views in like a week. so,
Wow.
so yeah, and so then you're like, oh well, they like this kind of cheesy ripoff of something popular, and so then you go and you try. Well, I'll just do more of those, and like, no, it
Yeah.
was just that one.
Yeah.
You don't know why, so you're just like, oh, I'll just
So
keep
just
making
do
them,
it.
and
Yeah. Do
whatever
what you
happens,
want.
happens.
Do what
So
you want. Do what you think is cool. I
uh,
think I think people ultimately, out of any content creation, I think what people are most attracted to is authenticity.
mhm,
And if you're personally really excited about something, I think
yeah,
that kind of helps a video become just a better video, but
for
also more
sure.
popular. People sense that, I think, you
For
know.
sure. Yeah, that's one of the things. Like I love horror movies, and I have loved horror movies since I was a child, and
Mm,
and so I've spent like most of my life writing about them or talking about them or criticizing them or
hmm.
whatever. So when you come to me, it's like, you get a guy who's been around. I lived through the 80s, through the
Right.
through the golden era, the 70s, and I was a little kid in the 70s, but I
Right.
saw a lot of movies I should not have seen, and same in the 80s, same as in the 80s.
Mm,
And so like this is one of those things. Like I see a lot of these younger guys try to break into the business and they want to write about 80s horror movies, and it's like, well, that's nice and that's cool, and I value your perspective on that, but a lot of times it shows they weren't there.
Right. Yeah.
And they don't have and they don't like take the time to do the work to figure out the context of them. It's just like sort of a knee-jerk reaction
Right.
to the movies. And whereas, I look at Fulci and Argento and Bava and all these Italian guys and the Japanese guys just in a different way, because like it was we were there.
Yeah.
Like we lived
Right.
through that time, and like you remember like getting Fangoria once a month. Well, it wasn't even once a month. It was what, 10 times a year or so.
Yeah.
Like they had
Right.
that hiatus.
I remember when I got it, it came with like a paper cover
Yes.
in the mail. I got it.
Yeah.
I subscribed. It's like a
Because they want
yellow.
people seeing that the cover art, all the gross cover art. Yeah, my parents wouldn't even let me get Fangoria. I had to go to the grocery store every week with them and stand at the magazine rack and read it while they shopped. They're like, "We're not buying you that." So, Gore Zone, what is that?
Yeah.
So
I had liberal parents in that way, so they were cool with it.
Mine were very liberal as far as like what I watched, but they're like, "We're not paying $5 for an issue of this, and it's got all this gross stuff on it. Not your brain." But like, my parents liked horror, but yeah, they would. Fangoria was a bridge too far most of the time. So, but like, yeah, I didn't have a website that had 24/7 updates on every single thing where I could talk with a bunch of other people. So and like at the time, Fulci and Argento and those guys were like, they're halfway across the planet. You didn't even know if those movies were ever coming. So
yeah, I remember. I mean, when I was a kid, I was like, because I think I'm a few years older than you, but we're kind of from the same era generally. I was like the only kid that was like the big horror guy in my town. Maybe one other was kind of into it, but that was it. It was not like it is today.
All my buddies were into it because slasher movies had boobs. That was it. Like I could rattle off the entire mythology of Michael Myers and Sam Loomis and Laurie Strode like it was my family.
Yeah.
All they cared about was like, boobs.
Yeah.
So here's boobs.
I know. I was very much like, I was such a snob with my horror stuff. I was so into it. I was like, Friday the 13th is just a cheap ripoff of Halloween. Yeah. It was like, can't you see that this is just a blatant ripoff? There's no suspense. I'm like a kid saying this. There's no, great cinematography's shitty.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like I really.
This isn't Dean Cundy's work.
Yeah, when you know who Dean Cundy is when you're 13 years old, you're pretty fucked up.
That was me. I was not always a jerk about it, but I could be. Yeah. I could definitely be a little bit of a gatekeeper.
I was just like, I mean, there was no one to say it to when I was a kid, but I was thinking that, it's like, I remember seeing Nightmare on Elm Street in the theater when it came out before it got big, and it was a little tiny ad in the paper.
Yeah,
that's how old I am. The little ads in the in the paper. It was tiny. It said Nightmare on Elm Street, Wes Craven, and I was like, oh man! I got my stepdad to take me because we'd go every Friday to see horror movies or sci-fi or something, and it was like nobody was in the theater, and I was like, holy shit, this is amazing.
Yep.
And then it blew up, and then it got huge. So it's like, that doesn't happen nowadays, like in the same way,
No, because there's a 24-hour a day,
everybody knows
every news cycle that that like Rob Zombie was on the set today and he drank 2 Starbucks instead of 1. What does that mean? Yeah, like
there are some benefits to all this information. It's just like it's a give and take type thing, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. It was pretty amazing seeing like the zombie. I saw the zombie trailer for the first time when it was going to come out in the drive-in. And it was just like, you can't. That's just like an experience.
Yeah, for sure. Like I was a kid and I grew up in the Pittsburgh area, and we used to go to Monroeville Mall when they were filming Dawn of the Dead. Like at that same, like
are you serious?
When I was a little kid, we would go to the mall and you would see them setting up. And
oh my
God, what are they doing? And they're like, oh, they're making a zombie movie. And I'm like, holy shit, can I be in it? Like, they shoot here at night when the mall's closed. So. Yeah,
that's definitely one of my favorite. That's the movie that got me into. That's the one that got me into effects. It was like, okay, I have to learn how to do this. That and The Howling were the two movies that just like, okay, I'm learning how to do this and getting in the film business.
I did not have that talent. I could sort of write. That was my talent. Yeah, but I could not. I'm not. I was never artistic enough to make masks. Everybody I knew wanted to be a special effects artist. You know, like we got older, and no, I did not have that talent, unfortunately.
Well, you know, I can't write for shit, so it's the way it goes. I mean, you've been a writer your whole life, right? Your whole adult life. I was researching you a little bit, and you've got, articles online from like 2000, I think, right?
Like I started I started as a so the sort of evolution was I went to college and I wanted to be Stephen King. Actually, I didn't want to be Stephen King. I wanted to be Skip Inspector and Clive Barker.
Yeah, see, I know Skip Inspector.
I wanted to be a splatterpunk, basically.
Right, splatterpunk.
And that's really what I wanted to be. And so I got out of college and I was working in a movie theater, and I would, write between shows. I would write short stories, and so I started submitting a lot of short fiction, short horror fiction, and I sold a little bit. But like, publishing is a business still mired in like the 1800s. Like, it's amazing that we live in a digital world, and like it still takes forever to get any kind of response to a publishing query. And back then it was even worse because you had to snail mail everything in with a self-addressed stamped envelope to get your rejection letter. They made you pay for your rejection letter. And then they'd be like, well, you can't submit it anywhere else, and our turnaround time is 8 months. So, and that was always optimistic. Like, you could be waiting a year for this story that was going to pay like 2 cents a word. It was going to make you like $80. You're like sitting on it for a year because I can't send it anywhere else. And so I worked in the movie theater, and then I worked for Blockbuster, and so I just watched a ton of horror movies, and I would go on to the old horror message board, the forums, Usenet, and then HorrorNet was like one of the early horror sites in the early days of the internet, and they had message boards, and I would just go on there and I'd type out these screeds about horror movies or books or whatever, and a buddy was like, dude, quit sending these out for free. He's like, do something with these. And so I'm like, what am I gonna do with them? Like, who's gonna want this shit, right? Some guy in Florida talking about horror movies, who cares, right? And he's like, and then suddenly I had jobs. And I stopped writing fiction and started writing about films and video games, and then like, my career I was freelance, but I wrote for all the big sites. Like, I've written for Cinema Blend and IGN and Fandango and the old Cinematical site, Movie Phone. So, and I've been doing that I was a Tomato Meter approved critic for a long time.
Oh, wow.
And I did that, I've done that for 20 some years now. I did go back and finally write a novel in 2018.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Which is a really crazy story and typical of how sort of lazy and clueless I am. So I wrote this novel, and we sent it out, and it got like a ton of interest from agents. Like, I was batting like 500 in terms of agents going like, hey, can we see The Fool? We want to see The Fool. And a lot of them would get it and then go, we love this, but we don't know who to sell this to. Like, we don't handle this kind of, we're not prepared to handle this kind of book. And for a while, Neil Gaiman's agent had it, and she really liked it. Wow. And she's like, but I don't think it's for me, but we have another agent here at Writer's House who I'd like to give it to. And can we do that? And I'm like, yeah, sure. I need an agent. And so they give it to her, and she reads it, and she's like, I really, really like this. And I would just like this, she's like, I'm not ready to accept it. She's like, I'd like you to, consider a few changes type thing. And I'm like, okay, sure. And it's been like 4 years, and I've just never gotten around to making
no, really?
Yeah. So I have this book that every like I've had like, I had like authors blurb it, like
Oh, you got to do
the
it,
pre
man.
like Stephen Graham Jones gave me a blurb.
You got to
You
do
know,
it. You got to
I've
do
been
it.
friends with Brian Keene forever. He's offered to blurb it. You know, so
Make him
yeah, and
do it.
it's just like, and then I'm like, no, I should start a YouTube channel. That's what I should do. Screw this. Let's just start something that's totally like at zero instead of finishing the thing that's practically done. So yeah,
Well,
but
I hope you make the changes because I want to read that book.
yeah, it's sort of an dark urban fantasy novel. The catch is it's a murder mystery, but it's set in hell. So
Oh, that's
yeah,
cool.
so
That
yeah,
sounds
it's like
fun.
it's a good time. And that's not me being, you know, a bragger. I usually hate most of my stuff.
Hey,
But
well,
yeah,
when you have
it's
that kind of interest, it's got to be
yeah,
good, you know, if you've got all these
yeah,
agents
yeah,
interested.
that's what I kind of base it on. I had a lot of like really big people ask to see it. We just you know, my girlfriend is a USA Today best-selling author, so she knows a lot
Oh,
of
wow.
people.
That's
She
cool.
writes romantic comedies, and so that makes us a funny couple. But, uh, but you know, she's like, let's just send this out, and she's like, here, you know, here's some really big agents. These are like the, you know, the swing for the fences. Send it to them and see what they think. And we got a bunch of them asked for it. Like just getting to, one guy was like, well, I really like this. I've got another author in my stable who writes something similar, and I don't want to have two of you kind of competing. And then, you know, we had a bunch who are just like, I really like this, but I don't know how to package this, like, because it's like a mystery, but it's a horror story, and it's, you know, it's got all these weird elements in it, and I'm like, cool. So, but you know, yeah, it was like just to even get to the stage where people are asking for the full, like
Yeah,
so many people are like, I sent out my manuscript to 500 agents and no, all I got were form rejections. And I was
right.
like, I was getting like personalized letters. So,
All right.
and so of course I did nothing.
You have to make the changes. You
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
do this. You have to do this. This is like people would give their left arm to have
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
opportunity. And
I,
how long did it take you to write it?
so it took me a couple months.
A
Um,
couple months?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
it?
I'm a fast writer.
Damn, that's
Like this is,
amazing.
yeah, this is like one of those things. Like I'm very much I'm a plotter. So like you know, some people are like, no, I can't plot. That sucks all the spontaneity out of it. I
Mm-hmm.
have to make it up as I go, and they get
Mm-hmm.
in trouble in the middle because they didn't think
Right.
ahead. I'm a ridiculous plotter, to the point where this, you know, like 400-page book had like a 65-page outline before I started
Wow.
actually writing it. So the outlining part of it took quite a bit of time, like almost as long as it took to actually write it,
I see.
because you know, like when you get into like if I'd written a story set in the real world, that would be easier. But because you're in a place that, you know, is not the real world, you have to make up all these rules and make sure try to make sure things don't contradict, because some guy's going to be, well, actually, you said this and then this
Right.
happens, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like,
right.
and that's the quickest way to piss me off, is to like come at me with a, well, actually. God, I hate well actuallys. Like, Jesus, leave me
Yeah.
alone. But yeah, just enjoy the story or don't, you know,
Right.
enjoy the video or don't. Don't, well, actually me. I don't, and if you didn't like it, I don't want to know, really. I don't really
Right. Yeah. I don't. Yeah.
it
Exactly.
doesn't help me. I'm not going to change it. It's not, you know, like, so so
Exactly.
yeah. So that you know, I don't only go around with YouTube. I go around with the troll commenters too, because I can't shut up. You know, so
Yeah.
like, you know, troll comment will go unanswered on my YouTube channel. So you want to be famous, I'll make you famous. At least it degrade YouTube celebrity style. But yeah, so like once I got to the outline and the actual writing, it was like I wrote, you know, 6 days a week. I tried to write at least 2,000 words a day. Um, and you know, that got me to 100. I think the manuscript now is like 108,000 words or something like
Wow.
that. So yeah, but it was really just and you know, some days sitting down and writing 2,000 words took about, you know, 2 or 3 hours, and some days it took 12. So
Wow. Yeah.
some days they cut. This is what you learn as sort of as a professional writer, is some days the words come easy and some days they don't come at all. And
Yeah.
just your job is just to power through that. And I think being a freelance writer for so many years kind of helps with that, because you're like, when you're a freelancer, if you don't produce, you don't
Yeah.
eat.
You
And
have to. There's
just,
no
yeah,
waiting around for
yeah,
inspiration.
you can't, yeah, if you just show up and she's going to be there at some point, you know? So that was always the attitude. And but yeah, it's like done. It just needs some some tweaks. And
Okay, you got to do it. You got
yeah,
to do it.
it's on the list, man. It's right after merch for the show.
Right. Yeah, you got to definitely got to do merch for sure, because that could be a huge source of income right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know.
we've got all these popular things on the show, all these recurring catchphrases
Oh
and
yeah, hell
characters,
yeah.
and like
I think hell yeah all the time, because it's like I
yeah,
have no one to share it with, because I'm
I,
just like a hermit in my
I
studio, but I'm always thinking hell yeah.
people tell me all the time, they're like, I do hell yeah, and I do bastard, and all these
Oh
lines.
my
And
god, the bastard one's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah. So
That
I'm
one
like,
always makes me laugh so hard.
yeah, I always like, hey, I love it.
Bastard.
Yeah, she sold that. So
It's amazing. Yeah, it's
yeah.
funny. It's funny that you mentioned that, because you mentioned wanting to be an effects guy, because that is one of the things. I wanted to be a writer too, like a horror writer when I was a kid, and I was just like never really that good at writing. So I did at one point write a short story that at the time, I'd like to find it and read it now, because I was like maybe 15 or something. And I thought, oh, I did it. This is good. And then I just never went back to it, because it was so hard.
Yeah,
It's so hard. And I was just like, drawing was easy for me. So I'm like, I'm
Yep.
gonna keep doing what I'm good
Take the
at.
path of least resistance. Sometimes
Lean into
is,
it. Yeah.
the way to go.
Play to your strengths. So
I'm very much a Buddhist, the middle path. Kind of
absolutely.
thing. Like, I don't want it to be too easy, but I also don't want to have to like climb mountains every day.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
every once in a while, just the middle road.
Yeah, exactly. I'm willing to do the work, but don't make it to where it's just
where it becomes work and miserable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, if you're gonna do that, you might as well work a regular terrible job.
Right. You might as well work in marketing.
So how did you how did you get into horror initially, like when you were a kid?
So the origin story of the horror geek is basically that my dad bought the paperback of Jaws when I must have been about right before the movie came out. So that was what, 75. So I was just about to turn 4. So that tells you how old I am. So I'm almost 50. I'll be 50 in like 2 months.
Okay.
And I was fascinated by the cover, the shark and the naked lady swimming. And, it was like, oh my God, this is like just something that my little 4-year-old brain was just fascinated by this. And so then the movie came out, and I'm like 4, and I'm begging my parents, I want to go see Jaws. I want to go see Jaws. My parents were like, we're not taking you to see Jaws. Are you high? and so they basically said, we'll buy the soundtrack album. And so I remember, so they bought the soundtrack album, and I'm sitting there looking at it, and I have these big giant 1970s headphones on. My dad has the record on the turntable, and I'm looking at the picture, and the Jaws theme comes on, and I throw the headphones off and scream. I'm terrified just by the Jaws theme. But my parents relented and took me to the drive-in to see Jaws one night. Like on a second run, like it ran forever. And there's 4-year-old me in the back seat screaming like a banshee at just the opening scene, and then I passed out and slept through the rest.
Too much for you.
Yeah, but I was terrified of it, but I also loved it.
Yes.
Like there was something just about it that like I was just fascinated by it. And that was really just sort of the start. And then Halloween came along, and I remember Halloween premiering on NBC like right before Halloween 2 came out, and it was like Halloween night or the night before or whatever. I don't remember, but I remember we were at my aunt's house, and it was on TV, and I'm in the room in the dark watching Halloween, the opening of Halloween, and I'm like, I must have been probably 8 or 9, and like hoping my parents didn't come in and see me watching it and then want to leave, but like I was also hoping they would want to leave because it was scaring the shit out of me. And it wasn't the stuff at the beginning, it was the stuff like the scene of him in the backyard with the sheets on the line
Oh,
where he's just
exactly.
standing there.
Yeah.
That just freaked me out.
Yeah.
Like
Those
8-year-old
were the
me was like,
creepiest shots.
yeah, like that's just terrifying. This guy's just standing out there, and
Yep.
you're in this house, and you see him, and like, what do you do?
Yep.
And yeah, so those were the sort of foundational films of my love of horror,
Those are,
basically.
yeah, those are good ones. I
Yeah,
mean,
you start out high. It's been mostly downhill since then, but it's been a fun ride.
I mean, we
Somehow you
talk.
get to Claudio Fragasso. I don't know how, but
It's part of the genre. It's I this is something that it's just something that we talk about all the time on the show. More in a kind of a dark art context, because mostly I interview other artists that do
Mhm,
like monsters and kind of dark artwork and stuff. But there's this through line of horror movie. Almost all the artists in the dark art are into horror movies. So it's like
mhm,
the same kind of thing. I see like horror movies as part of this whole dark art genre that
mhm.
that goes into music, and it's like a dark, creepy, weird stuff instead of bright, nice, happy stuff, which most
Right.
people like. And so I wonder, and talk about it all the time on the show. It's like, why? Why it feels genetic. It feels
Yeah,
like we're just
you're just
wired that
wired
way.
for it. Yeah, right
And
from the start.
yeah, that's how it feels
Y
to me. And it's like,
Yeah.
it seems like I wish someone would do like a real study on it, because it's really unusual as well, because almost everybody I interview that's into this stuff are really nice. They're
Yes.
like moral
The
or
yeah,
ethical people, and they're
yeah, the
not.
horror community is generally filled with very nice people.
And that's unusual to me. Not that
Yes.
it shouldn't be that way, but it's a weird dichotomy to
Yes.
be feel good. We get like kind of turned on or by this kind of imagery and these
Mhm.
stories, but we're like the least likely to ever be like that to another
Right,
person, that
right.
out of anybody in society, I think.
Yes.
Don't you think it's
Yeah.
weird?
It is. Yeah, and I'm fascinated by that as well because like the always the outside perception is that we're all like serial killers in the
Right.
making or devil worshippers or
Yeah.
whatever. And yet I've been involved in horror for my entire adult life, from fiction to filmmaking to I've known other artists and all of that, and been to conventions and all this stuff, and I've never had a bad time with horror people.
It's
Like,
always the regular people that you
yeah,
have a
yeah,
bad time
yeah. I
with.
have a way worse time with the people I see at the grocery store than I ever do around people who love this messed up stuff.
Right.
And I use messed up sort of funnily because I don't
Right.
think it's that messed up.
Yeah.
I think the beauty of horror people is that I think we're just comfortable with being morbidly curious. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of people in this country kind of come from that sort of puritanical background, and
Hmm.
they're not supposed to like that stuff, and you're not supposed to be curious about it. It's bad. And I think everybody is. And I just think we're just more open about it. And that is sort of a liberating thing that makes us happier, nicer people because
Yeah.
we don't have these hangups. So
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We're not holding it in,
yeah.
because at the root of it is, I think, at the root of horror or dark art or anything, is kind of the root of all fear. Really, is the fear of death, I think.
Hmm.
And everybody is going to die.
Yep.
So it's like it's in everybody, and it's kind of normal to be afraid to die. It's like,
Sure.
yeah, nobody knows what the hell. So um in a sense, I've always felt like, or not always, but really through this podcast, doing this podcast for 5 years and discussing it over and over, it's like we are dealing with that, processing it more than most people in this
Hmm.
weird in this way where we're able to.
It's like a dress rehearsal.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like we're confronting it in a safe way, without
We
actually having to confront it.
we laugh around here because I am the king. They call me the king of worst case scenarios. Like, like there. I saw this article like a year ago about the companies needed to hire like a worst case scenario guy instead of the usual yes man, like the guy who comes in and thinks about things and says, here's where everything could go wrong. And
Right.
here's how it could go wrong. And that's what I am. And it's because like I'm superstitious and I believe in this old adage that if you think the worst, it can't happen. So I sit around sometimes and think about the worst case scenario for every situation in the hopes that that sort of keeps me safe from it.
Right.
And it's all like a dress rehearsal for being dead.
Right.
like oh, I don't want to get eaten by a shark. Well, I've thought about it now, so that's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, the chances of me thinking about this and then dying the same way are
almost
impossible.
slim, right? Yeah. So yeah. I'm not going to be eaten by a tribe of cannibals in South America because I'm not A, going to South America, and B, I've thought about it. So
yeah, speaking of cannibals, I was so so grateful that you reviewed Cannibal Holocaust and Cannibal Ferox too. You did, I think, because those are both movies I wanted to see my whole life, but I cannot watch them because of the animal stuff.
Yeah,
it's like I can't. That's my kryptonite. I can't deal with it. It will never leave me if I see it. It's just like I've always been like this overly sensitive to animals.
Another horror thing that people don't expect.
Yeah,
like,
right.
We love animals.
so when it came on, I was like, oh great, I get to see this. And he's like, he's doing all the hard work for me, so I don't have to see it. But I still
that was part of doing it. Like for me was like, well, we can do this and we can talk about this movie and I can do it in a way where you don't have to see the sort of unpleasant things that that keep everybody away from these movies. And it's interesting because I have been all over the place with the Italian cannibal films throughout my career. Like I love them. Like it's one of my favorite subgenres. Like they're all the same and they're all ridiculous, but I love them.
Right.
But I hate the animal stuff.
Right.
And for a long time, you go like, okay, it was 1980.
Yeah.
In the jungle, they ate these things after they were done for the most part, not all of it.
It was done.
It was a different time. As like we weren't as enlightened as we are now.
Right.
But again, coming back to them for the videos, like I skipped those scenes.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I'm not covering them. I am not writing jokes for them. There's no need to sit through it. And I'm like, if I never see any of that stuff, the turtle scene or any of that stuff again, I'm fine. And I always thought like that it was cool that, they had made versions where they cut that stuff out. And I try to tell people that all the time.
I do want to see
versions where they cut it out and you just get the cannibal film experience without the few things that are actually going to traumatize you for life.
Yeah.
And
but
at the same time, I find it incredibly fascinating, and not so much for horror people because like horror people get it. Like nobody was eaten by cannibals in those movies. Those animals were really killed.
Yeah, right.
But but the people who've never seen them, who just hear about it, were like, well, I'd watch someone get killed and that's fine, but you kill a muskrat and that's the bridge too far for me. So there's a sort of weird disconnect for me, like about that sort of thing. But yeah, that's not how it is with horror people. It's just like, but I always see the people who've never seen it, like, oh yeah, I'm fine if they butchered people and stuck a pole up a woman's nether regions and but the rest of it's too much.
Yeah. But that's another thing. The point I wanted to make about that was what I appreciated you doing the episode is like I kind of felt like I watched the movie. It's like I got
don't say that. Don't say that. No. The copyright people will be like, it's a replacement for the movie.
No, not in the way that I watched it. I felt like I got the vibe of the movie, which is what I've always wanted. I wanted to know because I'd read articles about it in Fango. I've seen pictures. I've never seen any video, nothing significant enough to where I felt like I could capture the vibe of the movie. And so I really felt like, if I can find an animal cruelty free version of it, I would absolutely watch it because there's something so creepy and it's like the stuff that I love, and I'm sure you love too, is like the stuff that they used to show on Saturday or Sunday afternoon creature features, the cheapest grindhouse, crappy Italian shit that nobody knew about. Right. And it's like I was young enough to where you would see it differently, even though it's like it's weird because it was terrible,
Mhm.
like poorly done. But when you're a kid, you can't really tell how poorly it's done. Like I'm
Right.
talking, 5 years old, seeing that
Yeah,
stuff on
you
TV.
don't have enough of understanding about how what differentiates a good storytelling from bad to know
Right.
that this is
So,
full of cliches and terrible,
right. So you're just
implausible situations.
so you're just seeing, but you're getting kind of like the pure horror of it. You're getting
Yes.
this feeling and it just sticks with you. And so that's part of the reason, it's carried over to my adult life. And now I'm like seeking all this stuff out, like the Andy Milligan box
Mhm.
set.
Oh, you
And
got the box
yeah,
set?
I got the
Yeah.
box set. It's like, oh my God, it's amazing. It's so bad. But it's like it's fulfilling that thing. Like I want to go back and have that experience again because you
Yeah.
can't see movies like that anymore. You
Well,
just can't experience it that way anymore, especially being
that's
from the industry as well. But
right.
just being an adult.
That's 100% one of the driving philosophies behind sick flicks is to just like, like there you're probably never going to hit 5 million subscribers covering weird 80s Italian films. Like James at Dead Meat, he's way smarter. He covers newer stuff and popular stuff and all that, and like you catch a way it's a way bigger net to
Yeah,
catch
but
a
but
bigger
but
audience.
let me interrupt you first though. There's an Andy Milligan box set.
There
It's
is.
amazing. So it's like
No,
if there could be
we
an Andy Milligan
we
box
live in
set,
amazing
there
times.
could be a $5
Absolutely.
million 5 million person horror geek following. I believe.
Yes.
I have faith. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, but for me, the part of the fun is like that's a time capsule in a way, those films, and like it's weird to me because you lose concept of time as you get older. You're like the 80s to me seem like they weren't that long ago, and yet
Right, I know.
we're almost we're 40 years ago now. So
Right, I
like
know.
like all the stuff I love is almost 40 years old. So
Yeah.
but there's also a whole generation who doesn't isn't familiar with this stuff, and I would like to show it to them. And I part of why I do what I do is because I think I'm a pretty good curator of that
Yeah,
kind
oh,
of
yeah,
stuff. Like
definitely.
I see a lot of guys who are younger than me who, like I said, weren't there or don't know it very well, try to cover this stuff, and it just comes across as not very genuine. And with me, it's always genuine. Like I
Right.
really love this stuff, and it's been a part of my life for most of my whole life, really. And so that for me is part of the fun of doing the show is talking about these things. And like I pick these movies because if I can find ones like last week, like Bloody Muscle Bodybuilder in Hell, where nobody knows about them,
That was
that's
insane.
that's a win.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
like that's my happiest moment because I found something that even like most of my hardcore audience doesn't know about.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I get to be the guy who turned you on to it.
Right, yeah, yeah.
And I still get messages from people who are like, I read your Argento stuff 20 years ago and I never knew about any of this stuff, and now I love this Italian horror. I love these fake Japanese snuff movies. I love all this weird gory shit, and it's because you wrote about it. And I hope the videos that will be the same thing, just to a newer generation. Like, I didn't know Fulci even existed. He was dead before I was born. But
Yeah, yeah, it's like we take being our ages, we take that for granted. Everyone
we
knows
do.
Lucio Fulci. It's like I
Yeah,
assume
yeah,
everyone knows, and it's like some
yeah.
people don't even know, like these younger people don't even know, like couldn't name the Beatles, any of the
Yeah,
Beatles, or
yeah.
stuff that we just
I
assume
run into
everybody.
people. You want to my daughter is almost she's almost 30. She'll be 30 next year.
I got a 30-year-old
And
kid too.
yeah, and she was talking to one of her friends one night, like I don't know, 5 or 10 years ago, and I was in the room, and they were talking about The Shining, and the guy's like, "Oh, that old movie," and she's like, "Do not let my dad hear you say that." I'm like, "Too late, I already heard it." Like, what are you talking about? That old movie? That movie's a classic.
Yeah,
It's
that's
not only a
exactly.
great horror movie, it's a Stanley Kubrick movie. That's like the double win.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah, it's just an old movie, just an old horror movie. Yeah,
yeah.
please.
So yeah, like this kid had never seen The Shining. Like he just
Wow.
thought it was just some old movie that wasn't worth seeing. And I run into it. Like it drives me nuts every couple months when somebody trots out the millennials think Halloween is boring.
Right.
I'm like, that's because they haven't watched it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's a different time. It's
It
a
is.
different time. It's like,
I very much feel like the old man yelling at clouds a lot of
yeah.
days. So.
The funny thing is, for me personally, is like I was always, because I got into effects early, I was like the young guy on the crew always. I was the youngest
Mhm.
guy, and everyone was like, they seemed old, but they're only like 2, 3, 5 years older than me,
Uh-huh.
maybe. And now I'm the old guy.
That's
And it's like
yeah.
everyone that comes on the show is younger than me.
Yeah.
It's like all the artists that are into my, or people most of my fans and stuff are like
Mhm.
younger than me. And it's like, how did that happen?
Uh,
I was so used to being the young guy. Now I'm the old guy.
my YouTube demographics skew older for YouTube, like, but still most of the audience is younger than me.
Yeah.
Like, I've got a
Yeah.
couple in that over 50, and very few in that over 60, but a lot of them are in that 35 to 44, which is
Right.
still
Yeah.
significantly younger than me.
Yeah. That's where I think most of my fans are around that in 30 to 40 range.
Mhm.
Which is, it's the way I figured. It's like people that started getting into my stuff when they were in high school,
Mhm.
probably, because when I was starting my art career, they're probably in high school and checking my stuff out.
Sure.
And so now they have jobs and money, and they can buy
Money and
buy
yeah,
artwork and
buy
stuff.
artwork. Yeah. Yep.
But which brings me, I want to talk to you about this. There's so many things I want to talk to you about. Well, first off, okay, before we get into that, because I want to talk about Beat the Geeks, because you
All
said there's
right.
a funny story there. Because that was weird. That was okay. I don't want to get ahead of myself.
Yeah, don't get it. Don't
You know what?
spoil it.
One of the things I love about zombies, one of my favorite zombie movies of all time.
Mhm.
I'm a Night of the Living Dead guy. That's probably the first horror movie experience I had that changed everything for me, is
Mhm.
watching that when I was on TV, sitting in my underwear after my bath on Sunday night. It was on TV. It's sitting there just being like mesmerized.
Yes.
And it's one of my favorite movies of all time. But then it was Dawn of the Dead was a huge one, and Zombie. And what I love about Zombie is this: it's so bad in a lot of ways and
Mhm.
so good, legitimately good in a lot of ways. Like the
Right.
cinematography and some of the shots is like, that's the cinematographer's name.
I forget
It's
who did
like,
that one.
because he worked on a movie that I worked on in Italy. One of my
Mhm.
first movies, Cellar Dweller.
Oh, you
It's
worked
on
on Cellar Dweller?
he worked on Cellar Dweller. He was the DP, or he was on Cellar Dweller or one of the other movies that was being worked on while I was out there. But I talked to
Mhm.
this guy. It'll come to me, his name. But some of the shots are amazing, like legitimate works of art,
Yes.
cinematic shots, like the crab walking by
Mhm.
in the frame. It's like there's so many amazing shots. There's also amazing atmosphere with the
Mhm.
drums and stuff going on. But there's like some of the zombie, the head getting bashed in with a butt of a
Yeah.
gun, or it looks like boysenberries or something. And some of like an exploding head, the head is just so bad. It's like they did it in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But there's also some really cool gore effects as well, and some really great zombies in there.
Mhm.
It's just got such a great mix of bad and good that I love it.
That's sort of Fulci's career in a nutshell. Like,
That's true. That's true.
and so this is like, not to derail the Beat the Geeks thing, but like, this is one of those things that makes me crazy about people talking about Fulci, is like there's this sort of tendency to dismiss his work as like kind of crappy. Like, it's, people love it, but it's kind of crappy.
Mm,
And I'm always like, well, that's not entirely accurate. And Zombie and Don't Torture a Duckling and things like that prove that
mm,
when Fulci wanted to be engaged and wanted to make a movie, he was a craftsman.
right.
He knew what he was doing. And you see, though, that after he went through the sort of blackballing with the church after Don't Torture a Duckling, that he felt sort of betrayed, and sometimes he showed up and sometimes he didn't care.
Right, right.
And later in his career he really didn't care. But
Right.
like, even the lesser Fulci films like Manhattan Baby or things like that, there are still some great shots in there, or cool things, and so I always get like sort of defensive when people are like, oh yeah, Fulci, he was just this gore hack,
Yeah,
type
no,
thing. It's
no.
like the guy made movies in a lot of different genres and had a very promising career early on, and he just
Right.
kind of he was a little bit cantankerous and difficult to work with,
Yeah.
and then the church got on him, and that sort of derailed his career. But yeah, so that was
Yeah.
my Fulci defense.
Yeah. I mean, he made I mean, the zombie versus shark is like it's
Yeah,
like a masterpiece of
everybody
surrealism,
knows that.
horror
Like,
surrealism.
yeah,
It's
if you're
so,
into horror, you know about it.
yeah, yeah, it's so weird and so cool, and it's just
He was
it's that,
just he was never he was never Argento. Like, he didn't
right,
have the connection. Dario's dad was already, and his brother were a great entryway into the business for him, and
right.
and I suspect that Argento was in his prime certainly more talented than Fulci, but the idea that Fulci was not like was just a hack, like that he was just
Yeah,
phoning them in type
yeah,
thing
no, no.
is
I
always
got the
bugged me.
Yeah, I had the feeling like from Zombie in particular, since it's such a favorite of mine. I've watched it a million times. It was more of a budgetary thing.
Yeah,
Any of the badness was more of a budgetary
sure.
thing because it's like it had a cool story and
Well, and the fact that they had to shoot everything in 6 different languages and then dub it
right,
all post, and
right.
like, which is like something I often have to explain to people, and go like, yeah, they didn't even shoot sound on any of this because this guy was doing his lines in German and she was doing them in
Right.
Italian and this guy was in English, and they just went, we'll just figure it out in post. We'll just get Rusoff and Ed Mannix in here to dub everybody and it'll be good. So
I do love I love the dubbing in these movies though. It's
oh
like
yeah.
it adds to the charm of it. It adds to
Anytime I hear Edward Mannix or Ted Rusoff, I immediately geek out because it's like they worked in so many of those films and didn't even get credited for
really.
half of them. Yeah, like they're just perennial, like almost every Italian movie of that era, especially Rusoff. He is like all of them. Like, he turns up everywhere. So,
Wow.
and then there's actually an interesting interview with him on YouTube where he talks about like he never met Fulci, but he heard he was kind of cantankerous and it was funny that he was in all these movies. But yeah, and Edward Mannix is even like more of a mystery. I've never been able to even figure out if that guy actually existed. Like, there's a voice and there's a page for him, but I've never seen like footage of him or
Right.
anything. Like this is like some construct that they made up in a
Right.
studio somewhere.
Like,
This
yeah,
guy.
yeah. That's a yeah. You're like a scholar of this. It's like if you don't know this guy, who this guy is, then I would,
Yeah,
then
yeah.
he may not exist.
I've always wanted to do a video about Mannix and Rusoff, and like you can't find a lot of Rusoff footage. You can find a little bit, but like I can't find any good Mannix stuff to make the video at all. And it's like I've spent a year looking.
Yeah.
like I know this voice exists, but I'm not sure this Edward Mannix is even a real dude. Like this is like another Joe D'Amato pseudonym or something. So
Yeah,
it was probably Joe D'Amato himself doing
yeah,
it.
right. Yeah, you've a lot of names, Italian names that I wasn't I wasn't familiar with a lot of the names that you bring up that are coming up over and over. It's like now they're familiar names, so it's like I really do feel like I've been educated on a lot of this stuff.
And I don't love to hear it because like I'm a teacher, but I just love to hear it that like I can bring attention to these people whose work is often ignored and that I love so much. Like, as much as I make fun of Mattei and Fragasso and Rosella Drudy, I love those three. Like I love them, and I would love to spend an evening with Fragasso and his wife, just talking about Italian film, like, and partially because he's like so crazy delusional that he thinks he's like Kubrick, and I would just love to sit there and hear that firsthand about how Night Killer was really supposed to be his noir masterpiece. But I would just also just like to just talk to him and tell him like your work has just entertained me endlessly. Even if it wasn't for the reasons you intended, but it was in its own way.
Right. Right. That's what matters in the end. If people
Right.
love it, if
Yes.
and we love these kinds of movies.
But like Luigi Montefiore, aka George Eastman, Giovanni Lombardo Radice, like all these great Italian character actors and writers, and
Mm-hmm.
Suavi, and I'm just, it's been like my mission for 20 years to make people aware of these creators and
Yeah, yeah.
artists, and
Well,
and
yeah, it worked
so
with me. That's I had no idea how tiny that set, that industry
very,
was
yeah,
until watching your
very
video. It's
tiny.
like always, and it's like they put
Yes.
American names to
Yep.
like hide their names. It's so funny.
I'm Vincent Dawn.
They're always like, oh, you can tell like an Italian person
Yeah.
thought this would be a good American name.
Bruno apparently chose Vincent Dawn because he loved Vincent Price, and Dawn of the Dead was his favorite horror
Oh, really?
movie. And so Vincent Dawn, I'm like, that's a metal name, dude. I love it.
Totally. Absolutely.
Like, that's not Clyde Anderson or Humphrey Humbert or some of those terrible ones you guys, but Lewis Fuller.
Yeah.
Argento was the only guy who never had to do it. Like,
Right.
he never did it. He was always Argento.
Yeah,
But everybody else had a different name. Michael Suavi at least was close.
Yeah.
But like D'Amato, Jesus, D'Amato has I bet there are 100 D'Amato pseudonyms we don't even know about. Like, if you comb through
probably,
IMDb,
right.
like I do it sometimes. I'm like, I bet that was him. Like, this name sounds like a D'Amato pseudonym.
Right.
So
well, that's one thing when I worked on Cellar Dweller in Italy is I realized that Sergio Salvati was the DP.
Was the DP?
Yeah,
okay.
and he like
that sounds right.
Yeah, and I think that's what it is. And I think he worked on like the good, the bad, and the ugly, like
a lot
spaghetti
of
westerns.
Yeah,
and I realize it's a really small group of people. It just never occurred to me with all the Italian horror stuff that you show on your channel. But when I was out there, it was like, I couldn't believe this guy was working on this crappy ass movie.
He was like, to work.
Yeah, and he was happy. He wasn't like, oh, I have to work on this. He was like a cool guy, enjoying his job. All the crew, all the Italian crew were super. Everyone except who was a total asshole. He was the production manager. He was just a screamer asshole. I don't mind saying that publicly because he was that bad. But that was like everyone. Nobody like. But it was such a cool environment. They broke, they had these long lunches. There was a commissary where they had wine and this amazing bread. Everyone was getting drunk at lunch. It was just the way that it was a relaxed atmosphere. It was a really cool way of making films, and everybody worked on everybody's movies. It was like, the grips. It's like everybody knew each other. It was a small little family,
tiny little community.
Yeah, it was super cool. Really great experience.
I'm always saddened that like it ended. Like they didn't make those little horror films anymore. So it's like, man, it was such a shame because there was so much wild inventiveness and even in the stuff that didn't work was still wildly inventive and entertaining in its own weird way.
Right. I worked on 3 movies out there. One was Cellar Dweller. One was called Pulse Pounders, which was Stuart Gordon, H.P. Lovecraft like anthology. I think.
Did that one get released?
I don't know. I
don't think it did. That name sounds familiar to me, and I think that was one that didn't get released, because wasn't that like the one they were talking about doing when they did Castle Freak out there?
I don't remember.
Because that was mid-90s.
I went out there in 86 or 87.
Okay,
that's when we shot that. And it was called something else. It was called something else when we were working on it, and I think it got released as Pulse Pounders, but it was called something else.
Okay,
but I don't know. I could be wrong.
No, it's just funny because I was just reading about because I was doing a Castle Freak script. There's a little sneak preview of something that's on the horizon.
Oh, cool.
And because I was like, I got to get through all the Combs and Crampton and Stuart Gordon stuff, and Pulse Pounders came up in there, and I'm like, I have never seen that, and I'm like, I think it didn't get released, or it got really limited release, or something.
So. I think so. But I have to say, Stuart Gordon was super cool.
Oh yeah,
super
I
cool
bet.
guy. Like, cause we ate lunch times together, and he was so
Uh-huh.
nice, and he was a big, huge Lovecraft fan. He was just
Yeah,
like, he was like us. He was like a
yeah.
horror nerd, you know. He's
Horror nerd. Yep.
super cool guy, super cool guy. But anyway, oh, I was gonna say one more thing. I do this every episode. I blank out. People are used to it, so it's okay. Um, Salvati. Forgot. Anyway, okay, never
It'll come
mind.
back.
It'll come back to me. So anyway, okay, let's get on with let's hear about
Beat the
the
Geeks.
Beat the Geeks saga.
Yeah.
Because what how I found it was, I found your channel and I was like, oh my god, this guy's great. I love his, when you find a new creator, you like start
Hmm.
looking around for them and see who is this guy, because these
Uh-huh.
videos are awesome. So I was looking you up, and I found a video on
Yes.
some weird, it wasn't YouTube, it was
Daily
some
Motion.
Daily Motion, yeah, on Beat the
Because
Geeks.
YouTube blocked mine. That was my
Yeah.
video.
Okay.
That NBC blocked, or Viacom blocked worldwide, and someone took it from my video from YouTube and put it on Daily Motion on their account.
It looked pretty rough quality,
Yeah.
like copies
Yeah,
of
so
copies.
yeah, it already was rough quality when I uploaded it in like 2009, and then they took a copy of a copy.
Right.
So yeah.
And
Yeah.
so then I saw it and I'm like, oh wow, this guy's on, the show I never knew about, because I never heard of the show. I
Mhm.
didn't see it at the time. I just wasn't aware.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh shit, that's Paul Salamoff. You were
Yeah.
playing Paul Salamoff. Oh shit, Paul Salamoff beat him. Oh my god, I can't believe it.
I
Because
love
it's like,
Paul.
I worked with Paul for, I don't know, 5 years or something at Alterian
Uh-huh.
Studios. So
Yeah.
I knew him pretty well. So it was just like such a weird thing to go looking
Yeah.
someone up that you just discovered. It's like,
And then
oh, they're
discover that you have like, it's not even 6 degrees of separation,
yeah,
it's
right.
1.
So how did that whole thing happen? Because that was like a TV show. I mean, that's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
So early in the late 90s, I started writing about film, as I had said, and I wrote a bunch of stuff online, and for a long time I wasn't I freelanced. I wasn't Nobody wanted to pay anybody to be staff anywhere, right?
Mm.
Because you're writers and you're expendable even back then. But there was this site at the time called ePinions that was like a site for just product reviews, and they paid like 10 cents a hit and 30 cents a hit depending on what category you were in. And like that, I was like, this is a scam. They're not going to pay me 30 cents a hit per review. But I'm like, I'm going to put shit up here and see what happens. And like nobody was covering cannibal films and stuff like that, but people were certainly looking for it.
Right.
And so I'm racking up millions of views on this site at 10 cents and 30 cents a hit. And I'm like, they're never going to pay me this money, right? This is like a typical internet startup. I'm going to do all this work, and I'm going to have all this money in an account, and it's imaginary money, and they'll send me stock options or something, right? That'll be worthless. And lo and behold, they paid.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
And so that became like this primary like income driver for me for a number of years, because like, I was making good money writing for places like IGN and all the other traditional sites, but this was per hit. And like, that was a terrible idea in retrospect, because it's so easy to manipulate.
Right.
Like, I can get all kinds of people just click on this shit all day.
That
right?
was
before
before that was a common knowledge, I think.
But yeah, so I'm doing that, and I'm doing well, and I'm writing for a bunch of places, and one day I get this email that says, hey, I'm the casting director for an upcoming Comedy Central game show called Beat the Geeks, and we're looking for a horror geek, and I found your work, and you're like super knowledgeable, and we'd like to invite you to come down and audition. And I type back, yeah, sure. Which one of my friends is this that's dicking me around, like yanking my chain? And she's like, no, we're serious. I'm like, all right, I'll come. And that was like, they booked me a flight to LA, and they're like, you're coming in on September 12th, 2001. And September 11th, 2001 happened, and that was not.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So I'm like, oh, maybe my gig is gone already. So, but they ended up rescheduling me to come down and audition on like that October around Halloween. And so they were on the same lot as Mad TV. They were like they shared studio space with Mad TV. So I go down there, and I go to the production office, and they have a quiz for me, right? They're like, we're going to film you, and we're going to ask you these questions. We want you to answer the question. And if you can ad lib interesting shit about the answer, do it. And so I'm like, okay, sure.
Yeah.
And so they fire off 10 questions and I missed one. I missed Chop Top, Bill Mosley. I couldn't think of Bill Mosley's name. Like,
Oh, right.
the easiest question on the list, I flub. Right? like the easiest damn question on the whole test, I flub. But they're like, oh, we love you, and they're like, oh, I'm like, what other geeks do you even have? What other geeks are you gonna have on the show? And they're like, well, we're gonna have a movie geek every episode who's like a recurring, and a music and a TV geek, and then you guys will be guest geeks. And they're like, and we have a Simpsons geek and I forget, like a Sopranos geek, and they're like a hip hop geek. And I'm like, can I take that test too? Because I love rap music.
Yeah.
And they're like, sure. And I beat the hip hop geek score on the test, but they wouldn't give me 2 roles. So, but I went home and they're like, yeah, you're the horror geek. And like, we talked to a bunch of different people, and like people didn't like, we had some gothy girls who couldn't answer the questions, and we had some guys who could answer the questions but had no presence. They're like, you are the guy, you're the horror geek. And I'm like, okay, sure. So they're like, we'll get you to come down, you're going to do 5 episodes the first season. So I go down there and I show up, and it was, it's always funny to learn how production works, because you're like, a 30-minute show takes like 6 hours to shoot.
Right. You're thinking, I'm going to be there for 30 minutes and
I'll go back to the hotel. No. It's a whole day. It's like a 12-hour day to shoot 5 episodes, and that was fast.
Right.
But so I did it, and it came out, and we had good ratings, and so they picked us up for a second season, and they're like, we want you to come back. And I'm like, here's my problem with this, is like, the first season I show up, nobody challenged me. Like, I got
really?
I didn't get to do a final showdown. I got like asked one question, type thing. And so they're like, well, we're going to fix that. We're going to be better about, putting contestants who have interests with a guest geek, so that there's a better opportunity for the guest geeks to get challenged. And so I'm like, okay. I'm like, I'll be honest. I'm annoyed. Like, so this total tangent, but one of the funny things was that they pissed me off, because they would ask these questions of the geeks that were like essay questions, which is fine. I don't care. Like, I'm supposed to be the expert, and you can ask me a tough question if you want, but they would be wrong. Like, one of the questions was like, what was the tagline of Child's Play, or the tagline of Child's Play 3 was like, look who's talking, or something. And that wasn't the tagline of the movie. That was just what was on the poster. That wasn't it was what was the subtitle, and that wasn't the subtitle. That was just the tagline. Or they asked me like a John Carpenter question that had to do with like Memoirs of an Invisible Man. I'm like, that's not a fucking horror movie. Like, I'm like, why are you embarrassing me? Like,
so you're getting these questions on the show?
Yeah, on the show.
Oh,
yeah, these weren't the test questions. No, these were on the show. And
oh
I'm like,
my god.
So I was a little annoyed about that. But I'm like, because I don't like to look dumb, and I'm like, like, it was important.
Right. Yeah,
like,
you get it wrong because you're right.
Right. Yeah. So,
and most people don't know any better. So
right. So but they said, well, come back and we'll do it. And so I did, and I got more challenges the second season. And one of the last episodes was Paul's episode, and he challenged me in the final. And so we go up there, and I'm up like, I think 4-2 or something like that. And you have to get to 6, and you can pick 1, 2, or 3-point questions. And he knows I'm going to pick a 2-pointer, and I'm going to nail it, because the 2-pointers are pretty easy in the finals. 1 and 2-pointers are pretty easy. 3 points are, significantly harder, especially for the geeks. Like, again, they gave you a harder question.
Right.
So he knows that I'm going to pick a 2 and win. And he's like, and he's going to have to take the 3 and pull out the Hail Mary. And the question is about the changeling. And he literally is like, I just watched this yesterday. And so he beats me on a 3-point question about a movie he had just see. And we still laugh about it all the time. I'm like, you're so lucky.
Yeah, that is so lucky.
But
That
I'm
is so
glad
lucky.
because like his part of his and so the funny thing about Beat the Geeks was they were notorious for not actually giving out their prizes.
Really?
Yeah, like people had a hard time, like I heard for years afterwards, like at the end, like if you won the big package at the end, sometimes you didn't get all the stuff, or sometimes you really had to harass them to get the stuff, or you didn't get exactly what you were supposed to get. And Paul's package, because it was a horror package, was to go be an extra on a trauma film, and he actually ended up doing effects for it, I think.
Oh, wow.
So it was, I don't know, but I think it was like a pretty important moment in like his career as a Hollywood talent. And so I'm like, I'm glad I lost, because it, like if I won, it didn't do shit for me.
Right.
Like, gave me a little ego boost. But like he got to go to a trauma movie and all this stuff. And yeah, so
oh, cool.
But yeah, that's how I met Paul. And it's funny because the footage of me and him that was on YouTube that you saw on Daily Motion was actually, he put together a DVD of his episode and sent me a copy, like so I could relive the agony of my defeat forever, I guess. But
that sounds like something he would do.
Right. But it's funny because he found, he and I hadn't talked in quite a few years. Life happens type thing. And he found the show on YouTube. He found my Sick Flicks, and he's like, oh my God, I love this. And so we did reconnect over that. So I was happy about that, because I love Paul. He's a great guy.
He's a good dude. He's a funny, cool guy.
Yeah. So I was glad, like if I was going to lose to somebody, I'm like, Paul's a good guy to lose to.
Yeah, totally.
Definitely. And it gave him even if that wasn't like a key thing in his career, it gave him a job, like to do something.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
So I'm happy that worked out that way.
So what happened? Did they cancel the show, or what happened with that?
So what happened was typical Hollywood. There was a regime change at Comedy Central, and we were a popular show, like right behind Win Ben Stein's Money, I guess, at the time. And when the regime change happened, the new VP of programming came in and shit canned all the old guys' shows.
Oh God.
And so Ben Stein's Money survived, but we did not. And,
that's a bummer.
And so, yeah. And the really funny thing about Beat the Geeks was that, it did well. It's still, people still watch it. Like it's still on in like Canada. They run the runs in like Canada or Australia or somewhere. Sometimes I don't get any residuals from that, but sometimes I get an email from somebody who's like, I saw you on Beat the Geeks in Australia, and it's like 20 years ago. How is that still on? But the show was really sort of ahead of its time in terms of like celebrating geek culture.
Definitely.
Like geek culture was not quite as big as it was now back then. Whereas if they'd come along like 3 to 5 years later, they'd have never got us off the air.
Right.
It would have been like
huge.
Everybody loves all this nerd, they'd have Marvel geeks and all this stuff. But it was a fun experience, and it was good from a branding perspective.
Definitely.
I'm the horror geek. You can call yourself a horror geek, but I'm the official horror geek because that was my title. So
you got paid for having that.
I made a decent chunk of money. I got to go to LA, and they treated me like royalty. Like I had a trailer and people following me around. They had special lunches. So I met some cool people. I met Paul and like Paul the TV geek I still talk to, and Mark the movie geek. They're all great guys, and we actually did like a little reunion thing a couple years ago. Paul was trying to get the show, Paul Goebel, the TV geek, was trying to get a relaunch of the show off the ground, which didn't happen, probably because it's just cheaper to steal it and do it yourself now instead of bringing us back. but yeah,
no doubt.
So yeah, it was like a weird sort of double-edged sword, because again, like the novel thing, I came off Beat the Geeks and I'm a writer, and suddenly I had offers to do a lot of TV, which was not expected. I was not prepared for. Like ESPN wanted me to come on. They had that morning show on ESPN2, Cold Pizza. Like they wanted me to come on as a like a recurring segment type thing about movies and video games and tech and
Wow.
stuff like that. But I had to move to New York, and I lived in the Bay Area at the time, and I was like,
Wow.
fuck, the last place I want to go is New York. I
Right.
live in Oakland.
Right.
Like, it's a total different vibe.
Yeah, definitely.
And then like there was an AMC movie review show. They're like, we want you to come on and be, you and tell these stuffy guys why these movies are great.
Wow.
And I was just like, I'm a writer, I'm not a TV personality.
Right.
So I just basically nixed all of it and went back to writing, and then the internet writing industry fell to pieces.
And now you're
and
now you're a
now I'm a YouTuber. Yeah. So
but I mean, that
yeah.
is being a YouTuber is that job now. It's the modern version of that job.
It is.
Those jobs
It's a better job in a lot of ways, because I say all the time, like, my videos have put up almost 10 million views, and
wow.
like there are shows on cable that don't put up
I know.
views like that.
It's crazy.
Like I'm beating cable network TV a lot
right.
of a lot of the time. So
yeah. And it's like, it's funny because I watch like news shows, and it's like the Sunday morning news shows. I don't have TV anymore. I just watch everything on through the internet.
Yeah.
And it's Meet the Press. You know that show, Meet the Press? It's like the longest running show in the history of television. They put their show on YouTube every Sunday, and the sound quality is total dog shit.
Right.
It's like distorted. It's like they're just from that era is just like,
it's
kind
amazing
of irrelevant
how
now.
How technology has evolved. Like you can set up, like my show looks like crap because it's supposed to. Like I could make the show look better. I could go out and buy fancy cameras and better lights and all this stuff. But part of the charm of a low budget horror movie show is that it's supposed to look like your Saturday afternoon crappy guy on a set. I grew up with Dr. Paul Bearer here in the Tampa area. And he sat in a crappy chair with like a cardboard background, and and made a lot of puns and terrible jokes. And so that's what I grew up with, all those guys. And then I had Joe Bob, like way back. Like I'm a Joe Bob hipster. Like I was around before Monster. I was back when he was on TMC, when he was doing Joe Bob's drive-in movies and showing like Sybil Danning and Andy Sedaris movies and shit. Like so yeah, but like those guys and Charlie Balin were like the big influences on me, as far as like, you can talk about this stuff seriously and all that, but you literally can make a professional looking YouTube show in your spare room with an iPhone. The technology is so amazing and so affordable. Like the phone in your pocket is as good as stuff they were shooting TV with a couple years ago.
Yeah. And it's like, I think that people, you have to be at least our age to fully appreciate it. Yeah, because we grew up at a time when it was like,
if you had a camcorder was expensive.
You had to. I remember, I had to rent a VCR to watch a movie. And rent the movie, and they were like $100 for a video cassette if you.
You had to put the big deposit down, and the VCRs weighed about 3 tons, and they were top loaders. And our first VCR was a top loader. It weighed about 3,000 pounds, and it had a remote that had a cord. Like it wasn't even a wireless remote. It literally did fast forward and rewind, and play and stop, and it had a cord that reached across your living room. So, my dad's cousin is an accountant in Pittsburgh, and he was very well off. And I remember we went to visit him must have been like 82 or 83 maybe. And he had a VCR before people had VCRs, like before it was a common thing. And I just remember him showing us this gigantic behemoth box that played John Wayne movies that he could stop and rewind and fast forward and pause. And I was like, oh my God, I need one of these. And now kids are like, what is that thing?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So, well, I mean, we're getting near the end. I don't want to keep you too long. I appreciate you making the time for us here.
It's been fun.
Yeah, super fun. I do have to ask a couple final questions, which is
kind of lightning round for me.
Yes, lightning round. One, what are your future plans for the show? And then the other thing is, you're a fucking power lifter.
Yes.
Like, it's like you've got a video on your Twitter feed of you lifting like 500 pounds or something. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, I was a
Insane.
540, I think, that one.
Yeah, insane. Insane. So
All right.
yeah, what the hell, man? That's
All right.
like that's really unusual.
So plans for the show. Let's tackle that one first.
Okay.
Plans for the show. They're very much in flux right now because of the situation with YouTube. I envision doing I could do sick flicks for the rest of my life.
I hope you do.
And never cover all the movies that are worth covering.
Right.
I get out one video a week, and that's 50 videos a year. If I did that for 20 years, that's 1,000 movies. There's way more than 1,000 movies on my list of things I would like to cover. So yeah, but I also fear that the way YouTube is moving and the sort of content industry as a whole is moving, that like doing the kind of show I do, which is so reliant on footage to make it work, may not be viable. I think there will always be a way to do movie videos where there's more of you on camera and less of the footage, or just very select bits of footage that you can get away with. But where mine, it's like going through the movie and making jokes about specific things on screen or that are happening, uses so much movie. I think it's made me, that's part of why I'm such a target, is because they like to go, well, this is a replacement for watching the movie. And it's really not, because
no.
As we pointed out in the Conquest counterclaim, the Conquest is like 90 minutes long. My video is like 17. Of that 17 minutes, it's not all the movie.
There's no way. There's no way I'd ever watch.
And then I'm talking over it when the footage is there anyway.
Yeah, there's no way. Anybody who
it's not watching the movie. Like, I'm sorry. If it was, I would admit it, but it's
not even close. It's not
the same thing. Like, I want you to see things that make you go like, oh, I want to go see this without him talking over it.
That's the thing. You want to watch the movie after you see it.
Right. And the fact that I get people who comment, I wish you'd shut up and just show the movie, tells me that like, that it's working, that I'm not, you're not seeing the movie. I'm talking over it. I'm ruining the movie for you.
Give me a break.
But yeah, I get those comments.
Yeah, I know. I see.
Let me watch the movie. You're like, Jesus, dude.
I see him.
But yeah, so I like doing sick flicks. Sick flicks is a lot of work. Like, I never realized how hard and time consuming it would be to write terrible jokes, like to write dad jokes.
That's one thing I wanted to bring up, is the writing. Your scripts are so good. They really are good.
Oh, thank you.
The writing is great. It's not just like, for people who haven't seen it, it's not just some dude talking about movies. It's like it's well written, scripted, and really
it's a lot of dad jokes and terrible puns. Like, if you grew up with Elvira, and like, that's the vibe. And this is what always kills me, is that guys will come in and they're like, well, you're not funny, or these jokes are stupid. It's like, that's the point. The point of the fucking show is that the jokes are supposed to be stupid. I don't think I'm Jerry Seinfeld with a dad joke.
And they are funny. They're funny in that way. It's like that you don't get the humor. It's not that they're not funny.
I'm paying homage to these horror hosts who I grew up with, who were so instrumental in my love of this stuff. The Dr. Paul Bears, the Svengulis, Chili Billy, Elvira, Joe Bob, like all these people like helped foster this love of this. And this is how they did it. And it's like me, I love that stuff because it's so goofy, and I love mystery science theater. I've been a Misty for forever, and so I'm like, I can do that. I'm not as good as those guys, but I can do it and help you find some movie. I'll do some movies that these guys weren't going to do. That's part of the thing. Like, and although Riff Tracks has done a lot of shit I've done lately, so it's sort of funny to me. Yeah, sometimes I'm like, oh shit, Riff Tracks did this. Oh man, like, how am I going to top that? Like, so, but so I think people, like, some people just don't get it because they don't understand it contextually. But you're not my fucking audience if you don't understand. Exactly. It's not my job to teach you the influences of my show.
I love your references too, because it's like, I know that, like, I'm in the 2% of people that are getting it, like shit from the 70s that nobody knows about, like TV commercial references or whatever it is.
So this is me. Yeah, I am a font of useless knowledge, like pop culture useless knowledge.
I am too,
and so I used to think Dennis Miller was a genius because he just fired off all these obscure references and I got them. Like I
Right.
knew almost all of them. And then he went nuts. But
Right.
before he went nuts, I loved the guy and I'm like, oh, I could do that because I know all this shit too.
Right.
and so like a lot of times I will just like there's a Boxer Rebellion joke in a video. Like who the fuck makes a joke about the like that's a
Right.
joke that lands for like 2 people, but it lands for
Exactly.
me. So
And
so it
that's
goes
what, yeah,
in.
yeah. That's how you. That's the correct approach because
Yeah.
there will always be somebody out there. You're gonna find the real true hardcore fans by
Yes.
being yourself 100%. That's what I
Yeah.
truly believe. And the hardcore fans are the ones that aren't going to give you shit for talking over the movie,
Right.
or for, you know, whatever, all these stupid criticisms. It's like you
Yeah.
don't want those people. You want the people that really love it. Those are the people that will go to your Patreon,
Yeah, like
and
there's
pay
this
for
weird,
pay for memberships to
yeah,
your YouTube channel and support you in a real way, you know.
there's this weird mentality online that because I'm on YouTube that I'm accessible to you, you know, and like I
Right.
am very accessible. I answer as many comments as I can, and I answer a lot of comments, and I'm very accessible
Yeah.
on social media. Like if you reach out to me in Messenger or Facebook or Twitter or leave a comment, I heart everything to let you know I've seen it.
Mhm.
I will get to your message if you DM me at some point. It may not be today. It may take me a week, but
Right.
I will get to it. And so, but there's this sort of weird, and they call, what do they call it? Parasocial relationships, where because you're on their screen that they think they know you and that you're
Right.
friends and that you and like really I consider a lot of my regular viewers friends even though I've never met them because we talk about this stuff and we like all the same stuff.
Mhm.
But at the same time, like there's this belief that because I put videos on YouTube that I want your criticism.
Yeah.
I don't
get
want your
that
fucking
at all.
criticism. Like I have no interest in your criticism.
Yeah, go do it yourself if you don't like
If
it.
you don't like it, don't watch it.
Yeah.
I don't need to know.
Yeah, that's the
I'm
thing.
not
It's free.
I'm not going to change it to make you happy. I'm not going to stop doing it because you don't like it. There's a billion channels on YouTube. I'm sure there's one you like. Go find it. Leave me alone. Like, and then people are like, well, you just want people who kiss your ass. It's like, no, I don't want people who kiss my ass. I just want people who enjoy what I do.
Right.
Like, and that's it. Like I'm not getting rich off this. It's a lot of time and work and I love to do it and it's fun. And when you come along and you criticize me, it sucks all the fun out of
Yeah,
it.
yeah, right.
And it's like it doesn't help anything. Like if you came to me with like I've had people come to me with like a legitimate thing, like, hey, your sound's a little off. You should try this. I'm totally open to
Yeah,
that.
that's a different story.
It's
Yeah,
when you come to
yeah.
me and you go, dude, you suck. You're not funny. You're not this. You're not that. Like, great. What am I supposed to do with this information?
It's
Like,
9-year-old boys. You
Yeah.
know, that's the thing. You can't. They're I wish there was some kind of like verification.
Yeah.
If you had to be verified in some way to get online, which will never happen, but if so we knew who was
Yeah.
making the comments, people wouldn't talk shit half the
Yeah.
time. If they're
I always think of that Mike Tyson quote about, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth on the internet. And then that the internet has made some of you way too comfortable with talking a lot of shit.
Yeah.
And that's it, man. I'm like, I say to guys all the time, I'm like, dude, you would not say this to my face.
Oh,
If I
yeah,
was standing in front of you, you would not say
definitely.
this to me. So why would you say it here?
Yeah. It's
But
just online.
yeah.
It's the way
So,
it is.
but the future of the show, I'm going to continue to do sick flicks until they make it impossible to do it, because I like doing it. But I have been working on some other shows, because I feel like on top of sick flicks, we just like sometimes there are some movies that don't lend themselves well to that kind of coverage,
Right.
like as much as I'd like to do Irreversible, it's hard to joke about Irreversible.
Right. Yeah. It's like
I learned a bit of a lesson with Martyrs. Like, how do you make Martyrs funny?
Right.
And, like I think I did kinda,
Yeah.
but like I go, man, that was a hard one.
Right.
Like, and maybe that's like should have been a different video.
Right.
So we've been working on a second show called Deep Cuts, which is more of a deeper dive dive into a movie type thing with maybe some jokes, maybe fewer, but definitely fewer jokes and less puns and stuff like that. But more of just the like,
Yeah.
The segments where I kind of talk about things behind the scenes stuff, or the more stuff about the trivia about the movie type thing.
Yeah, that stuff's really interesting. I enjoy that part of it as well.
Yeah, and a lot of people do, and a lot of people have asked for more of that. And it's like hard to fit it in around all the jokes.
Right.
And so I've shot a few episodes of that. This will be the first time I'm going to give you an exclusive.
All right.
The first episode, if I ever get around to filming it, is a video on what happened to Roddy Piper's lost horror film, Sinjin Smith. Are you familiar with Sinjin?
No, I've never heard of that.
So in the early 2000s, this guy, Ethan Dettenmeyer, announced he was making a movie called Sinjin Smith, and it was about a guy who supposedly the devil on Halloween appears in two places at once, the plains of India and a prison cemetery in Kansas. And this was the genesis of this story about Roddy Piper and Richard Tyson are U.S. Marshals who have to go pick up this guy at the Kansas prison who was played by Korn's lead singer, Jonathan Davis.
Oh, wow.
And
I know him.
We're going to escort him.
I should ask him about it because I know him.
Yeah, I would love to know more about it. I've tried to get in touch with Ethan Dettenmeyer about it, and he's never gotten back to me. But they were, going to transport this guy who's probably the devil, and they shot, like, as far as I can tell, they shot a ton of it, and then it just fell apart. And it's never been 100% clear why it fell apart, but apparently because the rumor always was that they didn't have a guarantee bond. So they ran out of money and they had no guarantee bond to finish. And, but like, there's like a whole, like I spent like 2 weeks in this Sinjin Smith rabbit hole, like old message board forums, and all the links are dead, but like through the internet Wayback Machine and all this stuff, like I can find some of these like Dettenmeyer on message boards talking about, well, Warner Brothers was going to release it, but they didn't understand it. And they wanted it to be like this sort of more teen friendly horror movie. And I'm making this dystopian horror movie and all this stuff. And it's like, and then Piper at one point was like, I'm going to take my name off of it because it's never coming out. But Richard Tyson talked him out of it. Like, just leave it out there and see if anything comes of it. And then Piper passed, and Dettenmeyer does like podcasts and all this stuff. And he's totally out there. But like, I messaged him and I've never gotten a response.
Wow.
And I'm a fan. Like, I wanted to see this movie. I want to, and now you've got like all this old Roddy Piper footage in this movie. Like, maybe finish it, or let's do something with it. Give me a couple pieces of it.
That would be amazing.
Than what's out there. We can, but yeah, so that's the first thing. Like, just a weird sort of horror movie that never happened that I'm interested in, that I think a lot of people don't know about, that they would be interested in, especially because Piper was such an icon. And so that one is scripted, and I've kind of put it. I've put it off
because your regular stuff is obscure horror movies, and these are like obscure horror movies.
I don't want them all to be that way, but that was like, I was like, man, I like what's the video that would like has the best chance of popping off to a wide audience, like, and I'm like, people love pro wrestling. People love Roddy Piper. I love Roddy Piper.
And they live as this huge thing now. It's like,
so I'm like, here's a movie that he did. And they shot a lot of that movie because there are clips of it online. There's like footage of them rehearsing it. I've got footage of them like scenes, and there's some guy shot footage of them at a Fango Weekend of Horrors in like 2006 or 2008 or something like that. So, I've done all this groundwork. There's podcasts about it, and like a lot of the stuff is lost because of the internet. Like, it's just gone.
Right.
But there are still articles and stuff out there about it. And that's why I really wanted to talk to, Ethan about it, because I'm like, well, what's the real story here? Why did this? And I think like if he didn't have the money to finish, they, again, like Beat the Geeks, were just too far ahead of the curve, because I think now you just crowdfund it. You just go like, we need $300,000 to put out this Roddy Piper movie, and people would jump in and throw money at him.
Yep.
And back then, though, that wasn't a thing. Everyone was like, I'm not giving people on the internet money. Are you crazy? That's a good way to get scammed. And so But yeah, so I've been fascinated by this movie because I heard about it when they first announced it. Like there was all this buzz around this little movie, and then it never happened. And I'm like, well, that's a great first episode topic
Yeah, that sounds
for this new
amazing.
show. And you know, like some of the other ones, like I'd like to talk about Del Toro's at the Mountains of Madness and
Oh
why that
yeah, I worked
failed.
on
And
that.
yeah, did you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
See,
worked
well,
on the
I'm gonna ask you some questions then. So-
concept designs.
some concept. Yeah, that stuff is still out there. Like, you know, and he talks about like, well, maybe it could still happen someday, and I hope it does. So,
Yeah. Now that
but
he's you know an Oscar
now he's an Oscar
winning,
winner, right? Yeah, that was sort of the thesis of that script, is that, you know, he won an Oscar. He could do this now if he wants. Somebody should just give him the fucking money and let him do it. You know.
Oh, the script is so good.
Yeah,
it's so
that's
cool.
what I've heard. The
so
little bits
cool.
I've seen of it, very cool.
I was
like
so
the best,
excited.
probably the best Lovecraft adaptation we'd have ever gotten.
Absolutely.
The most faithful, best, like just from the stuff I've seen.
Yep.
And so yeah, so I would like to do more stuff like that because, you know, it's different, but it's the same. And
I think it would be successful. I think it would be popular.
In some ways it would probably be more popular.
Yeah, maybe
because there's sort of a, you know, there's only so many people who can tolerate a bunch of dad jokes. and so, you know, you look at like, you know, the Ryan Hollingers of the world and you go, well, he just does these serious video essays about horror movies. I could do that.
Right.
Fuck, I know more. So,
yeah, right. Yeah.
But yeah, so we're doing that, and I'm kicking around a second channel, which I have not announced yet, so because it's not ready. But it's not a horror movie channel, but it is horror related.
Okay, cool.
So but yeah, so there's some scripts for that. A lot of it is just like I'm one guy. I have one editor. There's only so many hours in a day.
Tell me about it, man.
I like to play video games. I like to sit on my couch and do nothing. I don't get to do either enough. And that's why I haven't been on your show until now.
Right.
Literally, I work 7 days. I work 7 days a week.
Yeah.
A lot of weeks. It's 7 days.
Yeah.
And yeah, just to keep the show running, and it's killed me this year because the copyright blocks have been the first time I've missed weekly episodes. Like I missed the Lady Terminator week, and I'm gonna miss this upcoming week because they've claimed Blood Rage and blocked it. And so that process just takes time to play out, and I don't have. It's hard to get far enough ahead to have backups.
I know.
Trying to do that, but like
I'm in the same spot with the podcast. It's like this is going to go. It's going to go public Wednesday. It's like I do them right before I'm going to post them because I haven't been able to.
And that's how I did YouTube for a long time, and it just got to be too much.
Yeah,
and we got to where I'm like one ahead.
Yeah,
but I need to be like with the copyright stuff. I need to be like 6 ahead.
Right.
Because we had such a disaster with like Lady Terminator because that was a sponsored video. There was, you know, the Raid people of all people were like, we want to give you a bunch of money to promo our game in this video.
Oh, right,
and then it got blocked, and I had to tell them like, I'm sorry, I can't. This has never happened. This is uncharted territory. So we had to make another video and put it in, but like, you know,
that sucks.
So yeah, so then it not only messes with the audience's expectation, like it took. Missing that week, YouTube will tell you like missing a week's no big deal. You can miss a month, it won't mean anything. And my numbers were terrible after missing a week. Like the next video was Puppet Master, which again, popular movie, which was destined not to do well. And then but then to miss a week, and that video is the worst performing video I've had in like 2 years.
What, really?
Yeah, and we just got back with Bloody Muscle Bodybuilder in Hell was like the first one where the numbers have been back to where they were before we got blocked and missed a week, and now I'm gonna miss this week.
Oh man, that sucks. Well, you know, I still think, you know, hopefully the Patreon thing could be big. You've got 65,000 subscribers. I bet, you know, getting $3 a month from you know, 5,000 people.
Yeah,
that would be, you know, it's like it's hard to do, but
it is.
You see, Chapo Trap House makes like $100,000 a month.
Yeah.
on Patreon. So it's like
I know some very big Patreon people.
it's
So
possible.
and that's it for me, and that's sort of the thing, is I've always just been sort of reluctant to push it, because I'm like, well, people, times are tough, like, it's not a
Yeah.
great economy,
Yeah, but
and
it's tough for you too.
I hate to ask people, to like pony up cash for the show. My idea was always that you would just come and pay for your view by watching an ad or whatever.
Right.
And then YouTube started taking away my ads on everything, and they've taken away ads on old videos and will not, and just refuse to give them back. And videos that were fine for 3 years are suddenly not fine
Yeah.
anymore, type thing. But yeah, if we had a Patreon, and if I pushed the Patreon and we got to the point where the Patreon would just replace the ad revenue, it would make my life so much easier,
Yeah.
because I would not have to care about the ad revenue. And people are always like, well, I wish you put more gore in, and that would allow me to put more gore.
Right. That's the
Like,
thing.
not crazy gore to where it gets age gated, but like significantly more gore, where if somebody claims it on copyright, it's not worth their while because they can't run ads on it, and I don't want to run ads on it. So
Right.
it's a win-win.
Yeah, yeah.
You get more splatter. So
so everybody listening who listens,
Yes.
who supports the Dark Art Society Patreon, we've got like 400 people on there. So it's like, if you've already got an account, you can join at the lowest level, support Mike, watch the show. If you haven't seen it, you'll love it.
Just watch the show.
And you'll love it. You'll want to support him because he's doing a great work. It's like I said, it's my favorite show on YouTube. So okay, give me the quick version of
the powerlifting.
The powerlifting. The weirdest thing about you, I think.
Is that that's funny that people.
Well, just
yeah. I usually get. It's usually that I like. Yeah. So I'm a late in life lifter. I was a competitive tennis player in my youth. Was ranked for a while in the States.
So you're an athlete.
Yeah, a little bit. No, I never played like football or anything, but I played tennis and hockey, and then I got really, really fat. Like I hit 300 pounds at one point.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and then I had some health issues from that, and they're like, you really got to lose this weight, and you're not getting any younger, and this and that, and like I would not go anywhere near a gym or a barbell. Like I was like, this is not for me. This is meathead shit. I'm too smart for this. And so, but for some reason, I'm like, man, I'm like 40, and I've never been strong or big or anything other than fat. and so I went, let's just try this and see what happens. And I'm like, oh, so I went to the gym, and I'm like, I want to be like a bodybuilder. Like I want to be muscles and muscles on muscles. And so I went and found a trainer who looked like what I wanted to look like. And I said, I want to look like you. And I said, here's the thing. I said, I know you get 50 people come in here a day and tell you they want to look like you. And then when they find out it's work, they don't want to look like you anymore. I will do the work. That I will fucking run through walls for you if that's what I want, and you tell me to do it. And he's like, great. And so we sign up, and I start lifting. I know nothing about lifting, and I am weak. Like I am benching like 135. I am deadlifting like 185. I'm squatting like 135. Like just abysmal, like beginner number. Okay. Beginner numbers. They feel abysmal. But if that's where you start, that's where you start.
Yep.
In fact, I probably couldn't bench 135 when I started. But so I worked with him, and I'm doing it, and I'm like, I don't like this. This is exactly what I thought. I don't like this. And I'm like, it's not that I don't like lifting weights. I don't like the way bodybuilders lift weights. It's low weight for high reps.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't want to be this. I want to be the guy who deadlifts 600 pounds or squats 600 pounds for one. I'm like, one and done, one heavy one and done. And so I'm like, I don't want to be a bodybuilder. I want to be a power lifter. And so I'm like, shit, there's no power lifters around here. What the fuck am I going to do? And so I had met my girlfriend, and she lived in Sarasota. And so I ended up moving to Sarasota, and I'm like, man, I really need like a really good powerlifting coach who's cheap. And the universe heard me. The universe says, "Oh, Mike, we're not just going to give you a great powerlifting coach who's cheap. We're going to give you a world record holder who's free."
Wow.
So
Amazing.
I moved to Sarasota, and there's a little powerlifting gym there called Sarasota Barbell. They're no longer in business, but I go in there and I start lifting, and I'm like, I'm have lifted, and I'm to the point where I'm deadlifting like 315, and I'm squatting like 315, or and I'm benching like 225. So I'm thinking like I'm pretty big shit, right? Like, oh yeah, I'm strong. I'm gonna be a fucking monster in this gym. And I get there and I look at the board, and there's a guy with a 2,000-pound total. Like he's between bench, squat, and deadlift, it equals 2,000 pounds.
Sheesh.
And I'm 315, 225. I'm not even
Right.
1,000 pounds, basically. And I'm like, oh shit. I'm just gonna shut up. I'm like the lowest guy on the board is like 1,600.
Right.
1,400, something like that. Something that seemed insane. And so I'm going in there and I'm lifting, and the guy who's got the 2,000+ pound total is in there a lot, and we start talking, and he's a Bulgarian, and those guys are like crazy powerlift. Like the Bulgarian method was like a very famous powerlifting training regime that like you would bench and squat and all this 5 days a week, which is like insane, unheard of, because it allows no real recovery time, and it was always like max effort stuff, and they would do it like twice a day, and their attitude was like, we don't care if it breaks guys, because we're trying to build a couple of champions, and these are just broken eggs in the way to making
Wow.
so but the SEAL had trained that way, and it had obviously worked for him. And he comes to me one day and he's like, you got a lot of potential. And I'm like, coming from you, that's pretty, I'm like, oh, is this a sales pitch or what? Yeah. And he's like, you got a lot of potential. He's like, I'm going to do your programming if you want. And I'm like, for real? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, well, what is this going to cost me? And he's like, it's not going to cost you anything. He's like, I just see a lot of potential, and I want to work with you about
how cool is that?
Helping you get there. And he's like, you're going to do Bulgarian. And I'm like, oh no, I'm 40 something. I'm 45. I'm going to break. Like I can't, I'm not going to squat 5 days a week at like 90% or more of my max. He's like, you'll be fine. So he's like, I know you. He's like, you're just going to do it because I'm going to put the challenge in front of you, and you're just going to take it. And so I'm like, you do know me. Like, I'm stubborn. And so he did, and I started working with him, and maxes, I top out deadlift in the mid like 550 to 575 depending. My squats 550 plus, and my bench is my poverty lift. It struggles. I bench like 365.
A mere 365.
I can't get to 405, and so like my goal was 600, 405, and I'm literally going to be 50 in October, and I feel like time is finally catching up with me. Like I don't know that I'm going to hit those numbers. I'm going to try, but
that's amazing though. I mean,
it's weird. Like I know people hate the gym, and I know people hate working out, and I was one of them, but like I found like powerlifting clicked for me.
Wow.
Like,
yeah, you just got to find the right.
You just got to find the thing.
You
yeah, and for me, like the beauty of powerlifting is it's like it's never more than like 3 reps. And you get like a 5-minute break before the next set. So like it's perfect. Like I can fuck around with my phone, or do whatever.
Right.
5 minutes to rest.
It suits your personality.
Yeah, and yet but I gained like a massive amount of strength in like a year and a half. Just
wow.
And I'm natural. Like look, this physique is not a steroid physique.
Right.
I'm pretty fluffy right now. I am not in competition shape. So yeah, that was natural. And that was a guy who was already 45, who was well past his testosterone prime.
Yeah,
so
that's incredible.
So yeah, if you want to do those kind of things, you just have to commit and do them. But
that was my stepdad. He was a painter also. He's an artist. He was an athlete also. I was a motorcycle rider, BMX bike kid, but that was it for sports for me. But athletics wise, but he swore by, he worked out. He didn't do jogging or anything.
Yeah.
He was a weightlifter. He was
Cardio's
a
the worst.
weightlifter, and he was always in excellent shape his whole life. You
Yep.
know, he
I
was
think this is
all
where
about it.
they lose people with fitness is everybody thinks fitness is cardio. Like I have to
Right.
run, I have to walk on a treadmill for an hour, and that shit's boring. Nobody wants to do
Yeah.
nobody wants to do that.
Yeah.
I found that for me, when I was younger, cardio was more doable if it was running around a tennis court or skating on an ice rink,
Mhm.
playing hockey type thing, rather than than riding a bike, a stationary bike, or
Right.
running on an elliptical or any of that shit. And yeah, I mean, my doctor got on me about cardio this year, and I said, I do cardio. I do sets of 5 sometimes. That counts, right? Yeah. He's like, no, it doesn't. I'm like, I think it does. Let me ask Vasile. He'll tell me. So, but and it's like funny because I'm almost 50 and I'm pretty strong for my age, but Vasile is in his mid 40s and he just set a deadlift record at like 780.
Oh my
So
God.
yeah, for a guy who's like 45. And so that always puts it in perspective
Wow.
for me that as strong as I am, I'm not even close. So.
Yeah. Well, your superpower is being the horror geek.
That
So
is, yeah. That's
powerlifting
the
is
one
your
thing
hobby,
most
kind
guys
of.
don't beat me on. Yeah, powerlifting. Yeah. It's funny because like there's a thing that like if you deadlift 600 or squat 600 or bench like 405, you're in like the top 1% of the population of the world as far as
Oh,
strength
really?
goes. Yeah, like only 1% of the population can put up those kind of numbers, but then once you get there, there's another huge jump to the top. Like you have like Eddie Hall pulling 1,100 pounds, or Hathor Bjornsson breaking that record. These guys are doing 1,000+ pound deadlifts, and
That's insane.
so
That's
it's funny because I try to put this in, like we'll watch World's Strongest Man or something with people who don't lift, and I'm always trying to put this into perspective for them. Like I deadlift almost 600, and it's a fight. It's heavy. My ears plug up. You can't hear anything. You're like, you think you're
really.
gonna, like it's an intense effort. And I'm like, now
Yeah.
imagine that like double. And I can't even
Yeah,
imagine it.
that's wow. Yeah,
So to be that strong.
it must be just for you can't experience it unless it's not
Yeah,
like
you like you
anybody
don't even
else
have
can
any.
experience.
Yeah, you have no frame of reference at
Yeah.
all. You just go, well, that's heavy, but
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, you have
you
to
don't
do.
understand like how. And it's extra funny too because I say all the time like powerlifting is like dangerous because like a deadlift is pretty safe. Like guys will pass out doing deadlifts or tear biceps or stuff, but like when you walk out like even a 405 squat out of the rack, that's on your back.
Yeah.
That weight can snap you in half if you're not focused,
Right.
if you're not thinking about your proper form and doing the lift right. And if something goes, like I had a 455 where I popped a hamstring and I had to come
Oh,
up with one leg, and
that must have hurt
it's
so
it
bad.
was terrible. It was the worst
Oh,
experience of my life. I dropped a 500-pound deadlift on my leg once, which was not fun,
oh my
down the front of my
God.
leg,
It didn't
which was
break
also
it?
not fun. No, I didn't hit it straight on. It hit my knee on the way down, and then kind of grazed
Oh
down
my
my shin
God.
and hit
Yeah,
my ankle really good.
that's
But
dangerous, man.
yeah, but like this is why I always tell guys, like you see all these gym videos where guys are trying to quarter squat 405 because they think that's a big deal, and it's like you're just gonna kill yourself, dude. You see guys all the time drop. I've seen a guy drop a 400-pound bench press on his chest and have to be CPR.
Oh my God. Yeah, I
Like
can. That's the first thing I saw when I saw your video. I was
yeah,
like, I had no idea you were a deadlifter. I was like,
yeah, yeah. I
the
love it.
first thing I thought of was like, you know,
He's gonna
isn't
break
that
his back.
dangerous? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like that seems really dangerous. It seems like you
Yeah.
could really hurt yourself.
The funny thing is that is not a good deadlift in that video either, because it
No?
was like humid. My grip was slipping at the top, and so yeah, I ended up losing it. But yeah,
Yeah,
like
I don't even know how to judge the
you have
lift,
to. Like I have way better deadlifts. I've just never swapped the video because I'm lazy, as we've established. But yeah, but yeah, that powerlifting is when you get to those weights, it gets a little bit dangerous, and so
Yeah.
you gotta be dialed in, which is why I'm always like, guys are always in this rush to lift big weights, and it's like it took me a couple of years to get here, and I was fast, and it just don't try to put 500 pounds on a squat until you're actually ready to put 500 pounds on a squat, because it will literally break your spine if you
Oh
do
my
it
God.
wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to think about it every time. Like you go the wrong way with it, you get 500. I had a guy like was supposed to be spotting from the side, and he's holding it on the way down. He's actually holding it, and he's not supposed to be, and I don't know. And I hit the bottom, and he lets go, and it like throws me all off. And you get 500 pounds like helicoptering around.
Wow. Yeah.
Your back is not meant to withstand that kind of
Yeah.
shear.
That's so much. Yeah. That's just so much weight. Like people don't have any conception of how much weight that is.
Yeah, that's very true. Most people will never, try to pick up 500 pounds.
Yeah.
And sometimes they try and it just doesn't even budge. And,
Yeah,
then you go, wow, that's really heavy. But yeah, I love it. I don't. It's not for everybody, but I love it.
It's cool. I don't know. I just thought it was another weird thing about
It
you,
is
an unusual thing.
I have many unusual things.
That's
about
cool
me.
though.
I have led a weird life.
That's a good thing.
Interesting life.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Don't say weird, say interesting.
I mean weird in the best sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I always say weird. So
Don't say weird, say interesting. That's a good quote.
that's a family quote. We don't say weird, we say interesting.
That's
He's very interesting. He has an interesting fixation with these things.
Well, I gotta thank you. I'll let you go as you stayed on extra time, which I really appreciate.
Glad to do it.
Yeah, super fun talking.
I felt like I at least owed you some extra time after how hard it was to get me here.
That's true. That's true. That's true. Well, you made good on that. I really appreciate that. Love the show. Anybody, for people listening, I'll have it in the description, but tell people where to go to see your show and see your Patreon and all that.
Yeah, YouTube, The Horror Geek. The show is called Sick Flicks. You can also find me as The Horror Geek on Patreon. I'm The Horror Geek on Twitter. I'm pretty consistent with the branding. The only one we messed up was the Instagram. I could not get The Horror Geek over there, so I'm Geekpocalypse over there.
Okay. That's a good one.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, you reach this point where all the good names are taken.
Yeah, right.
And you don't want to be like, The Horror Geek 1275963. So then you start have to like making up cool names, cool words. So Geek Apocalypse was
that's a good one.
That's a good one. So we'll use that. Yeah, but you mostly find me on, and I'm on Facebook as Mike Bracken. But you mostly find me on Twitter.
Yes,
I just go to complain about things.
Yes, it's
which is what Twitter is for.
Yes. But
if you ever wanted to hear a guy curse at YouTube all the time, this is your feed, because that's what I do.
Well, yeah, everyone needs to watch. If you haven't seen the show, watch the show. It's great. Support them on Patreon if you can. Times are tough, but we got to support the people that we like if we want to see more of this content. It's like crazy that some of these YouTubers are making so much money, and the stuff is dog shit. The content is terrible, but I guess it's just not for me. It's like for kids or something, but some of the stuff is just, I don't know. I find it
other conversation.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry. I'm letting you go. But so if you want to see the good stuff, you got to support creators that are making stuff that you like, instead of being a passive viewer.
True.
Yes. So anyway, thanks for coming on. The last thing, we just have to say goodbye to the audience. So just however you want to say goodbye, audience.
All right. Goodbye, audience. And thank you for hanging out with us and for having me on the show. And I hope if you do check out the channel that you enjoy it. And if you don't enjoy it, please don't tell me. Or tell me nicely.
Be constructive in your criticism.
Be constructive in your criticism.
All right.